January 3rd meeting of the Falmouth Water Quality Management Committee will come to order. First item on the agenda is a progress report by the Woods Hole Group on the Little Pond Aquaculture Project. In view of the additional faces we have here tonight, I thought it might be a good idea to kind of run around the room and just have everybody say who they are, so that we know who they are.
Jeff Gregg, GHD, consultant to the town of Falmouth.
Rob Steen, right here, consultant sandwich.
Wannabe for film.
Always.
Mashpee Sewer Commission Administrator.
George Reitfelder, Falmouth Board of Health.
Mark Renee, Mashpee Sewer Commission.
You guys.
Cia Carplus, staff support to the Water Quality Management Committee, and to Jerry.
Jerry Patalis, Town of Falmouth Wastewater Superintendent.
Carol Sutherland, Recording Secretary.
Heidi Clark with the Woods Hole Group.
John Brawley, Woods Hole Group.
Bob Craig with Creative Group.
Ron Smolowitz, Domestic Farm Foundation.
Paul Hassett, Teaching and Civic.
Dan Ward, Oyster Farm in Falmouth.
Scott Lindell, NBL.
George Hampson, Coastal Ponds Management Committee.
Jake Fricke, Washburn Island Oysters.
Thomas Tressenger, Washburn Island Oysters.
Nate Weeks, GHD.
Wynn Monroe, member of the Water Quality Management Committee.
Matt Patrick, member of the Water Quality Management Committee.
Steve Layton, Water Quality Management Committee.
Tom Camberary, Picard Commission.
Tom Shields, Division of Marine Fisheries.
Virginia Valiela, member of the committee.
Eric Turkington, member of the committee, chairman of the committee. We have a seriously long agenda tonight, but I think the main reason the audience is here is to get the update on the Woods Hole Group and the Little Pond project. So
I'll keep it down to 2 hours.
but we'll give you 15 minutes.
I made too many slides. Do I need to speak into this?
Yes. Yes. The nationwide television audience won't hear you unless you do.
This is kind of an awkward.
You can take that out.
So they cannot see this.
I'll
Oh,
manage.
Well,
Yeah, thanks for
I
having
guess
us.
can't help it.
Basically, I'm going to go through these topics right here. Give you an update on some of the work we've already completed, and actually a lot of work that we've completed, and go over we did a review of the viability project, which is very brief, a shellfish stock assessment, which took place in October. Talk about the nitrogen removal capacities, grow-out methods, and some recommendations based on the numbers that we've come up with. Actually, not a lot of recommendations, but we can discuss that for the demonstration project in terms of the scale. Some cost estimates, some information on permitting and potential conflicts and challenges, and monitoring. Last year, the viability test consisted in Little Pond. There was a test, for those of you who don't know, who are interested. 3 floating bags were placed out in various places in the pond to see how oysters would grow. These were, I believe, started at about half-inch size, and the only information we have is in this table. The important thing to look at is based on the densities in these bags, is very low mortality, good growth. We don't have any measurements of shell length, but anecdotally, we heard that the oysters really took off, and it's a good place to grow them. We conducted a standing stock assessment. These dots you see on the map of Little Pond are the sampling points. They're a combination of transects from the shore and some random locations within the middle of the pond that were taken by boat. We found just Mercenaria, which is a hard shell clam. Those are the only species we found alive. Went out earlier before the sampling event and just poking around. I found some steamers near the mouth and some other smaller clams. But when we actually did the survey, we found just a few Mercenaria. The habitat we noticed was really confined to a narrow band from mean low water, 30 to 50 feet out. Sometimes very close, sometimes extending up to 50 feet out. Some interesting things. That dotted line was basically where an estuarine habitat transitioned into more of a brackish water or a different habitat. Spartina patens transitioned over to Phragmites on the shoreline. We found no shellfish alive north of that dotted line. The only places we did find shellfish are shown by the blue dots there. Those are the only sampling sites where clams are found. And the bottom was interesting. Most of the bottom of Little Pond is this anoxic mud. And north of that dotted line, the algae that was living there was this long green filamentous algae and a lot of iron deposit, precipitate. So here's the results in standing stock. We didn't find a lot of shellfish. Out of 136 samples, the mean density came to about 0.15 clams per square foot. What we did was we determined we wanted to look at what was potentially a suitable habitat, which is this light blue area, which is the area of the pond that's down to 3 feet below mean low water in elevation. The darker areas are the deeper. So we just counted that area. It came up with an estimate of about 250 to 300,000 clams living in the pond. That's plus or minus. It could be off, but just based on the samples that we took. Okay, so nitrogen removal capacities. Part of our job is to look at oysters, clams, various shellfish, do literature reviews, look at the basically previous studies that have looked at percent nitrogen content in tissue and shell, growth rates, things of that nature, and normalize the data and the information and come up with estimates of what, if you were to grow shellfish in any estuary, how much nitrogen would it assimilate through harvest? And then also we looked into denitrification and burial rates, which are biogeochemical processes, microbial processes in the sediments. That I'll explain a little bit as we get along. And should I just plow through this and then take questions at the end? Okay. Some of the results we have show various species. Oysters, cohogs, softshell clams, scallops, blue mussels, and rib mussel. If you take a second look, you can correspond the curve. The x-axis is millions of shellfish cultured, so that's basically, this analysis was 500,000 to 10 million. And that's the nitrogen that's potentially removed after one growing season in kilograms along the x-axis. The report I submitted actually has grams instead of kilograms. We'll fix that. Oysters is the blue line, second from the bottom. Cohogs is on the bottom. Scallops and what is that? Softshell clam have the highest retention values of nitrogen. But what comes into context when you're culturing or running propagation programs is the amount of effort and how easy it is to actually grow these animals. So scallops and softshell clams require a lot more gear. They have higher mortality rates. Their softshell clams need to be in sediment. So the practical nature of culturing the species has to come into play, whereas oysters are fairly easy compared to those species. So in a bunch of these graphics, what I want to show you is if you start with an initial size of 6.4 millimeters corresponds to basically a 1/4 inch shell length, and that's what growers typically grow their first grade out of, grade their first size class out of an upweller. These are oysters that are very small, so I'm shifting the discussion over to oysters and starting with a small size first. And this cone that you see is basically the cone of the extreme values from the literature of how much nitrogen they'll assimilate. And again, this is 500,000 to 10 million oysters, and the amount of mass in kilograms that you can remove if you put them in Little Pond, grow them from basically late May, early June through September, October. This is what you'd expect somewhere in this range to be able to harvest. The line in the middle is the mean of the values, the literature values. Okay, I'm comparing two sizes, a 1/4 inch size, which is 6.4 millimeters, and a 1/2 inch size seed. That's just 12.7 millimeters. That's the difference in the nitrogen that would be harvestable after growing season based on the initial sizes. So you start with a small, or you can start with a larger seed and actually sequester more. These are these are really, what we're showing is not the variability. We're not showing any probability, any uncertainty here. This assumes no mortality, assumes uniform growth, or at least a mean growth rate that's acceptable. The growth rates, by the way, for oysters were taken from, mostly from Ruth Carmichael's work, and Ivan Vallielo's work in Green Pond, and a few of the ponds in Falmouth and in Buzzards Bay. So they're pretty much site-specific. And they've also been normalized, adjusted based on estimated nitrogen load. Here's a busier slide which shows you if on the lower, the dotted lines are basically the curves that we've been looking at already. They are if you just basically farm oysters in Little Pond or in any estuary and harvest them, that's that smaller and larger size breakdown. The dark lines, the solid lines, is when we include denitrification and burial. Those estimates in the model were driven by a published model by Roger Newell at University of Maryland, who did a large data review, and came up with, and also his own mesocosm experiments, and came up with what he thought were very conservative estimates of denitrification and burial. And what this means is that as the shellfish feed and their biodeposits are excreted and come in contact with the sediments, microbial processes will actually convert some portion of the nitrogen in that organic matter to inert nitrogen gas, which is lost from the system.
So what's burial?
Burial's the non-reactive nitrogen, or slowly reactive, refractory, what it's called. It will just stay in the sediments and either take a very long time to react, or basically will stay there, be bound, physically bound. This is on the y-axis. Instead of just looking at kilograms, which doesn't really mean that much to everybody, this is a percent of the watershed load. The 150 days is supposed to represent basically a growing season. This is the time where the shellfish will actually be growing as the water temperature warms up in the spring and then cools off in the fall. So what you're looking at here is, I know the committee's been interested in looking at numbers from 500,000 to 2 million in terms of a starting point. The shaded area and the lines here will show you where, based on everything I've showed you so far, basically 4 or 5% to 20% of the summertime watershed load from the MEP project could be removed through harvest and the combination of harvesting and denitrification. That's what those curves are showing you. So in terms of moving forward with a demonstration project, what's the most appropriate way to grow shellfish, or particularly oysters in Little Pond? It's not very deep, but it's too deep to really work with a pair of waders. It's very soft bottom for the most part, except for the fringe area. And there may be water quality issues with trying to grow shellfish on the bottom. It's not a very suitable habitat. So what that leaves us with is to consider floating bags or floating racks. Here's a picture of a couple of guys deploying some lines of floating bags. And basically these are mesh bags with anywhere between 500 and 1,000 seed oysters in each one of them, and putting them in lines out here. This is what they look like. They basically have two floats on the sides. They're tied together. They can be anchored down the ends with some kind of anchoring system, cinder blocks sometimes if they're small, or if it's not a very high energy place, or anchors. People will disagree about what's easier, using floating bags or these things, and these are floating rack systems. These are basically lobster wire cages, trays that hold 6 bags, or sometimes 4, depending on, you can get them in 2 different sizes. This shows you 6 bag system with 2 floats on the top, pontoon floats. And when in the top figure, when the bottom, the oysters and the bags and the gear gets fouled up over time, you can flip these things over and they'll actually be buoyant enough to hold the fouling out of the water. It'll dry for a day or so, flip them back over, and the stuff goes away. You can do the same thing with floating bags too. This figure shows you floating rack systems. The guy is standing on a platform on the side of his boat to get some leverage to flip them over. A couple of guys on a pontoon barge, kind of working a little teamwork trying to flip these things over. The lower right's showing you what they look like when they're flipped over out of the water. And this figure shows you a combination, the buoys, or the pontoon floats, show the submerged cages, and the ones in the background have been flipped over for anti-fouling. So these systems, you require a boat. You need something sturdy enough to be able to get leverage to turn them over and to get them in the water and then back out of the water. If you need to move them during a storm, it's more work than if you have bags that can more easily be pulled out. So there are advantages and disadvantages. The common thought is that these rack systems would cost about $150 a piece, not including the bags, are more expensive than just using floating bags. But when you add up all the costs, and I'll show you some figures, all the floats that go with the floating bags and the whole system, they actually are more closer in price and also in aerial coverage than you think. I'm going to go through some capital costs numbers. I think that's what you wanted to see tonight.
You didn't look at any, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Submerged, something under the water line, but above the seabed or estuary bed.
Yeah, so in the proposal and in the report, we describe a variety of other types of grow out. So you can have racks that are on the bottom that look just like these guys, but they don't have any flotation. They have feet, so they'll be off the bottom by a few inches, but if the bottom's soft, they sink in, and you have to be able to actually have enough water. Can't be too deep. So,
but nothing a foot up, 2 feet up.
Yeah, I mean, you can have long line systems.
Okay, I don't mean that, sorry.
No.
Yeah,
so,
let's let him finish this.
But so some of the things that are involved are the permitting issues. Navigable waters, you can't have things over 18 inches without special permits and permission, so that comes into play. It's possible to do that. So here's some prices for seed. These are seed oysters from hatcheries in the top. Typically we get seed at 1.5 to 2 millimeters, put them in what's called a floating upweller system, which is a picture on the upper right. That's a little sack of 500,000 seed going into a silo. The silos are screened on the bottom, water's flowing up through them and exiting through a trough. They'll grow for about a month in that before they'll be large enough to be retained in typical mesh systems, which is the lower right. That's the bottom rack that's upright being loaded with oyster bags. But you could also buy seed in larger sizes. The lower numbers are in inches, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1 and 1 1/4. And those are the general prices of what they cost per thousand. There is some variability. If you're buying in bulk, you get a better deal like anything else. If you know the hatchery people, they might give you a deal. I'm going to run through a bunch of slides that it's a lot of information, but I want you to see the relative cost differences in floating bags and oyster grow rack systems. This is 1/4, and I did this by initial size of the seed, 1/4 inch and then 1/2 inches later. This is starting with a low density of 500, and this is the number of oysters in 500,000 million, 1.5 million, and 2 million, and then the cost below. Okay, this is a 1/2 inch seed, 1/4 inch seed at low density in area. This is the area that would be required, using the typical spaces between rows. So for 2 million oysters, going up to roughly 2 acres, just over 2 acres. This is high density. With higher densities, you need less gear, so the cost comes down a little bit. And the area required, because of less gear, goes down too. This is at 2 million, for example, about 1 acre of area. I'm just going to run through half-inch seed, the same thing. This is low density, which is 300 animals per bag. And I should mention, I forgot to mention, the cost, the dollars here are the full 3 years. It's the capital cost to start the project and then seed costs on top of that. And this is not including labor, boats, other capital equipment that may or may not be needed. I'll get into that next. So now we're approaching $500,000 for low density half-inch seed at 2 million. And approaching 3.5 acres of area required. Okay. Put a little star on this one because I thought that this might be one that the committee might want to look at a little closer. This is a half-inch at higher density. The reason I'm doing this is because starting with a larger oyster, as you saw in previous slides, you'll actually get more nitrogen out of the water. And you're also getting a larger oyster at the end of the season. So it's good for the propagation program. You'll have a larger animal. It's going to withstand the winter. It's going to be hardier. And in terms of the cost, the cost is under a couple $100,000 in capital cost to run this thing. And it's about 2 acres in the area. So to me, it seemed like maybe it was approaching an optimal size that the committee would want to consider. Labor costs vary, but typically the labor that's involved with this, growing oysters in Little Pond in this kind of system, these systems would be basically you need time up front. You may have to put the gear together, but these numbers assume that the gear is already assembled. You need to go out and actually put anchor systems in, put lines out, floats, and then get the gear out there. You have to load it with bags with oysters, get the oysters out on the lines, and then once they're out there about once a week, usually two people would go out, spend maybe up to a day, once a week, flipping them over, maintaining the seed. A day's probably plenty of time. These are just general numbers. It's a blended rate. It's fairly cheap labor, but not embarrassingly cheap. So assume probably about, and then there's a demobilization at the end, removing gear, maybe washing it, storing it, and so you assume about $10,000 at the scale, the $500,000 to $2 million. Other costs that you have to consider, if you want to use a boat, a small outboard, a used one is going to run you $3,000 to $10,000. Maybe some fuel. You might want to have a float to work on. That's something that a few of us have discussed. If you want to get seed cheap from a hatchery, I know the town has some upwellers already, but maybe an additional upweller would be something that would save some money and have the town would have more control over the seed. So just to sum it up, also to begin a project the first year, you might want to start on the lower side of the scale. Not try to grow too many oysters all at once the first year. There are issues of access, of just getting used to the little pond and what obstacles there may be out there. You could have a combination of floating bags and floating rack systems. Evaluate how each one performs, how it works for the town, or whoever's maintaining them. And you can look at the various cost differences. Okay, I know I'm going, this is way too long.
Keep going.
I'm sorry. Okay, so there's been historical monitoring of Little Pond. The purposes of this is to remove nitrogen from the water, to improve water quality in clarity. In order to detect improvement in water quality or a decline in nitrogen concentration or chlorophyll, you have to compare historical data with data that you collect during the treatment. So there's SMAST who's collected a lot of the historical data. has a proposal on the table. And this figure on the left shows two things. It shows the 4 red stations there, LP 1, 2, and whatever LP head 1, 2, 3 are what has been monitored historically. They're proposing for the town to consider additional sites to do those 4, and then have those additional 5 sites shown by the crosses. The purpose to really be able to see if there's a gradient or any kind of localized change, because the footprint will be maybe a couple of acres, and this is a 45-acre system. So the question really is that necessary? And the way to answer that is to look at the variability in the existing data. You want to be able to compare the baseline with what's going on during the project. So we've done some work on the data that's been made available from the MEP report, which is just total nitrogen concentration. These are means with some standard deviation information. And we worked with some statisticians and came up with some first cuts at basically determining the number of samples that you need for just one station, for the Sentinel station, to come up with a probability of detecting a change in the mean concentration. And these changes would be within 10% of that number. So if it's 0.8, it would be from 0.88 to 0.72. Okay, anything beyond that you could detect. So this is simply a graph in a table. The graph is of the table of the number of samples on the x-axis. You'd want to increase your probability of seeing a change in the water quality.
Samples throughout the whole season, or samples per sampling round?
For that season, whatever is being compared against.
And what is that number? We can't see it.
What is? Well, there are a lot of numbers, so there depends on how much.
The number of shellfish you need to put in there to be able to detect a change that would be caused by the shellfish.
Well, that's what we don't know.
Oh, fine.
So
you don't. Have you got a hypothesis?
We can calculate the mass. We can estimate the amount of nitrogen that we remove, but it's a variable dynamic system. So in this case, just total nitrogen. In order to detect a 10% change,
right,
if we're going to have enough shellfish to do that, which we may, it's how comfortable are you with being 75%, having a probability of 75 or 95?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
okay,
so
the problem. Okay.
It becomes a statistical decision-making tool. Okay, we've been working with DMF. Maybe I shouldn't say existing town permit will be amended if things go well. It could be amended by April 15th for propagation. A propagation permit is required to actually put seed in the water to handle it undersized. Mm-hmm. Then a special permit would have to be issued by DMF to relay, to take the shellfish before their legal size and to put them through a depuration process in an open area. Some things that we have to include in the contaminated area management plan for DMF is how enforcement is going to be come into play, histology, which is disease monitoring prior to any relay of shellfish, and basically the plan for depuration, where they're going to go and for how long. They have to go somewhere clean for 6 months in order for them to then be available for public use. Put this together just to remind the group that there are competing uses. There aren't any, this is a prohibited area, so existing shellfishing does not exist right now, although it used to. Where you're going to relay them to may have implications on wild stocks or recreational take. And probably most important is aesthetic or visual conflicts or issues, which would either be worked out or minimized somehow. Also, access is something we need to work on a little bit more. There's not an existing boat ramp. There's sensitive resource areas along the shoreline and private property, but there's also public property, and there seems to be some landowners that are willing to work with the town on access. The yellow dots are just potential areas that we've discussed with various people on the committee and the shellfish department on where access points could be. And that's all I have for now.
Good. You've done good.
Okay.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Comments, observations, whatever? Matt?
Could you go back to that nitrogen removal slide? It's way back.
One of the one of those graphs.
Yeah, that one. Help me understand this. So this is like, what, 500,000 to 1 million or 2 million oysters would do?
Right. Okay, so the dotted lines here, this is a
small one.
seed,
Yeah,
and then a large. So their trajectories come out on this slope.
right.
Here. Okay, and then this is harvest only. So these two lines represent only if you ignore denitrification. We're interested in removing nitrogen from the system. We know we can measure it through just taking animals out. We know how much nitrogen is in the shell and the tissue. So that's what these represent. There's some uncertainty around those lines too, but I just don't have them in here. The dark lines are if we add to the harvesting our estimates of what a reasonable rate of denitrification would be in the sediments due to growing oysters. So you're taking phytoplankton and other particulates out of the water column and basically putting them into the benthos rapidly through having oysters in the water. And so that the effect of denitrification is shown in these dark.
So the maximum you're saying is if we had 2 million oysters, you might be able to remove 20% of the nitrogen?
If you have, half-inch oysters, 2 million, based on all the information we have on these processes. There's a lot of uncertainty in this. I would assume, I wouldn't plan on this, but know that if conditions are right, denitrification may help out.
Could be 15,
Yep.
between 10 and 15%.
Or it could be 70.
Could be 70, yeah. Well, that's just for the committee's sake, I think that's very significant finding.
The problem with Little Pond is because of the low oxygen in a lot of the upper area, because the sediments are so anoxic, you may exhaust the capacity for denitrification because you need to have oxygen, aerobic and anaerobic soils.
Time rate for that? Is that like in the summer, 5 years for the denitrification to occur?
What's happening is instantaneous.
Oh, so it is instantaneous. That's good news. Okay.
So these are based on daily rates.
Steve?
Can you go to the slide of the sampling, the number of samples you need for confidence probability?
Yeah.
Am I right that to get a reasonable probability of a reasonable confidence of knowing the probability, I mean, of detecting the effects, you need a lot more samples than were proposed by SMAS? Or is it, am I misinterpreting that?
No, I mean, SMAS is maybe close. They're looking at, that's 216, but we're by station only.
Oh, and so you're referring to the total samples in space and time?
For the season?
Yeah, for a season. Now, we want to also test for dependence and independence of those samples. I mean, this is getting into statistics that's a little bit beyond my understanding, but in order for the data to be representative of what you're trying to measure and compare, I mean, you don't want to take. The thing is, there's variability interannually. You can have a warm, dry summer and a cool, damp summer. You have to have enough samples to account for that. And you don't want to have samples that are treated as independent observations when they're actually connected to each other.
No, I understand the issues. I'm just trying to get a summary for the committee that the samples that we're proposing to get from SMAS now would be of the order of 100? In other words, you'd be at the high confidence?
I should explain this a little further. This is just total nitrogen, and this was based on 9 years of means that we had that were just in the table in the MEP report, and then there's just one column of standard deviation for all the observations combined. So it's an incomplete data set. It's an example of if you had that data, this is what the results are of analyzing those data. If we had all of the data, the actual independent sampling events, they'd be different, most likely. This is total nitrogen, and that's variable. It's going all over the place, or it's not consistent all the time. If we were to look at chlorophyll or dissolved oxygen, which is also variable, but for light penetration, those parameters may require fewer samples to actually detect changes, to detect declines. Does that make sense? This is just
This is one parameter
total
that you're looking at.
With incomplete, data. But it's important to know that if you want to detect 10% change, anything within 10% you won't have confidence in, based on these numbers.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Virginia?
I just briefly looked through your report, which I think you called the second report. And I remember you saying that, or at least recommending, that the oysters be removed at the end of each season. And so the dollar amounts that you showed for the capital cost, does that incorporate that recommendation? They go in the spring, come out in the fall for 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it only considers, after the initial capital cost, it assumes that there's no gear replacement. It assumes just the cost of seed.
Okay, just the cost
at those rates. And the cost also includes, in terms of the bags, a second set of bags for switchover. Mid-season, typically, as they grow larger, you'll put them in larger mesh.
Okay.
So you need to switch the bags. So it includes those costs.
Okay. You also make the point they need to come out before they reach a certain size. There has to be 6 months before they reach a commercial size. Where they move to, has that been established?
That hasn't been established.
It has not?
No.
Has it been even looked at?
I've sat down with Chuck Martinson to discuss that. No specifics have been determined, to my knowledge.
It seems like it's a fairly important item to be
I think
determined.
that's also a discussion that the town would have with DMF
Okay.
as well.
Okay. And if we have, your recommendation was a 1/2 inch oyster and 2 million of them, and we needed about 2 acres, was that? To grow them in Little Pond. Will we need a comparable 2 acres somewhere else for them to move to, or will we need a larger space?
You would want to have at least 2 acres.
At least 2 acres.
Maybe something's telling me maybe 4.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, because they grow.
No, you can put $1 million down on an acre.
Yeah.
I've done that, but
By increasing the density.
yeah, you have a higher density.
Okay.
And then you walk on.
All right. So that's a key piece that's still missing. I mean, we want to get up and running this April, but we clearly have to identify where they're going to go.
Right.
Well, does the town have flexibility in terms of choosing areas in the estuaries, in the shellfish areas for doing this? I mean,
That's the Chuck Martinson question.
yeah. What we discussed is, places that would be closed, opened up for commercial use,
Right.
opened up for recreational use. So
Yes.
I think he has an idea about this, since he's running a propagation program.
Okay.
It's already going on.
So we're talking about where we put them to depurate them.
To depurate, exactly.
But we all already have shellfish sites in Buzzards Bay. right offshore. I mean, you could literally move these into Nantucket Sound or Vineyard Sound.
I had the sense that it had to be under control for the depuration period. Secure. Yeah, right. I'm not saying it has to be in a pond. All I'm saying is that we have to file a management plan before we can start. Clearly, the end of the management is they get moved to point X, and that hasn't been defined yet. Okay.
Yeah, I want to leave some time for public comment and
Yes.
public questions, but Steve, go ahead.
I read your report quickly, and you mentioned sitting down with Mass DEP about what they would require in terms of monitoring, but I didn't see what the answer was.
The answer is a defensible result, something that they can review and feel that it's scientifically defensible. So it could be just a concentration number. It could be long-term ecological changes in the system.
Thank you.
We have a lot of brain power in this room, and a lot of people know more about this than we do, so jump right in. You didn't all come to hear us. Ron Smolowitz.
Yeah, there's a lot of options. This is a great start, but the depuration thing, I mean, some of the things to be considered is the value of these oysters after depuration. And certainly the town getting involved with growing out the seed to larger sizes. I mean, one option is you grow out to seed to a larger size, something on the order of 3/4 to 1 inch that you put in April. And when you pull them out at the end of the season, they're going to be probably pretty close to the 3-inch. You could then put them into, like you say, cages that are under control in any of our outside of the estuaries in deeper water to overwinter. And those oysters as petites are worth 50 cents each. So if you're dealing with 2 million oysters, you're dealing with $1 million of crop. Which, when you start looking at the expenses, I think the town needs to take into account the potential value of these. So there's a lot of aspects here, and when you model, it's not just modeling for nitrogen removal, it's modeling for a system that pays for itself. So I think that needs to be considered in this process.
Yeah, we might have to put a guard out there to watch these
Well,
things.
that's going to be, you're going to have a plan that really, I mean, they're worried that somebody's going to take these valuable oysters and put them on the market where they meet depuration standards.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that as a community we need to incorporate into this is there's a lot of places where 6 months is probably not needed to, we don't have contaminants here that, other than nitrogen, which is more of a nutrient than a contaminant. So we could probably document and prove with study that they might be available for the market within 30 days.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a
Please.
question? Ron, do you think it's possible that we could sell them to a grant holder who would guarantee that they would be kept secure for the depuration process, and then?
I think that's working out your management plan with the state. I think they have a lot of flexibility in working out a management plan. So it's just like these contaminated seed relays that they do, for clams. And if you look at, especially in the New York area, what they've done with shellfish from Raritan Bay, moving them out. So there's a lot of examples of what you could do. And I think as long as you develop a system where the state feels confident that people are not going to take contaminated shellfish and put them on the market, there's a lot of leeway in what the system.
So the town could, in effect, sell them to a grant holder. He would take over the whole process after, and the responsibility
That person that you sell
after
it to
that.
will probably have to have a special permit.
Right.
Win, and then
Just a quick question.
Rod.
Does depuration
Todd.
begin during the overwintering, or is it something that only begins after they start growing again in the spring?
Well, Met with DMF, and that's something they're considering right now. It's possible, based on the testing that's done initially, that it can start in the fall, and by the spring they could be tested again. That's under their discretion to determine, but it's possible.
Good. Okay. Todd?
From Washburn Island Oysters, we propose buying them back from the town. I think that's a hurdle with DMF, to have them come back to a private grant holder. We could do that. We could guarantee that they're going to be in the water for the right amount of time, whether it be 30 days or 6 months, or whatever it is. But my understanding is that's a big hurdle with DMF.
That was not the scenario we started out with, for sure.
Our current policy regarding growing shellfish in prairie waters is for all shellfish to be destined for a public fishery. Right? However, there is some wiggle room where shellfish could probably be used. They cannot be sold for cash, but perhaps something could be worked out where shellfish could be used as payment, a form of payment for work performed in this type of a project. But right now, we wouldn't support sale of shellfish directly.
Jerry?
If the sale resulted in, let's say, funds going back to propagation of public shellfish within the town, does that slice it a little bit thinner, or no way? I mean, it's like a quid pro quo. The town's going to get some money from selling, which doesn't sit well with a lot of people, maybe DMF. But if that money is turned around and helps the town's shellfish propagation program, it might be a net benefit for everybody. And you don't have to answer now, just...
No, I understand the argument. Right now, we're not approving cash sales.
Okay.
Fair enough. Okay, any other, George?
Is there any negative impacts of the fecal material as they're growing in this? What's the balance within that?
Are you like in the benthos in this?
Yeah.
Potentially, it could be localized anoxia and low oxygen based on the accumulation of organic matter, especially when it's very warm. You know, it's not a very well flushed system. It gets very warm in the summer. My experience is that it's quite localized to within the footprint, but with floating system, there's a gap between the surface of the water column and the bottom, and there's that potential for material to dilute, to mix the surrounding waters before becoming deposited. And you can situate these so there's space between them and basically alleviating that over concentration issue if it is one. That's something the demonstration project would we certainly look at.
You and then you.
Scotland down.
John, I just wanted
Scott.
to examine the sweet spot you described here. I think it was 1.5 million half-inch oysters covering 2 acres, capital costs, operating costs about $200,000. And I think you said that would diminish about 10% of the watershed load of nitrogen per year.
5 to 10, based on this.
Right, and so I'm come back here. Is that what you want to take back, look at the?
Do you want to see it?
Well, the point is,
Yeah.
it's close to the 10% threshold, if I'm not mistaken,
In
you're
mass.
pointing through here. Is that the same?
It's 10% of what would be loaded to the system
Right.
over that same time period. So what we have to think about also is that you're starting with a small animal that's slowly, the instantaneous rate, the effective rate of nitrogen assimilation is low. Then as it grows, it increases exponentially with growth. So by the end, it's sucking up, what it used to be suck up, 0.1 milligram. Now it's sucking up, a milligram, orders of magnitude. So these are cumulative numbers. So the effect would be really most prominent in latter part of the season.
September, October.
And that comparison was just the mass of nitrogen that compared to the mass coming in, and not really the concentrations.
Right, do you see where I'm going? Because I'm puzzled by this monitoring dilemma
Yeah.
here versus the scale at which we have to grow oysters in order to see, like,
We may
like
see-
the probability changes.
You may see second that water clarity improved dramatically.
In
Much
terms
more
of
than
nit- in
10%.
terms of nitrogen, that's what DEP's worried about, that's what the town's worried about. Are you feel reasonably convinced that 1 million oysters is enough to be able to detect with the monitoring that Mass Dartmouth is going to be doing, to see the change in nitrogen?
We don't have enough information right now to make that. First, we'd have to have the data to look at, to make that determination. Also, we'd have to have a better understanding of the effect on actual nitrogen concentration that the animals would have. I mean, you want to run a pretty elaborate model.
So we don't have enough information without doing the demonstration.
I think you can do some of the first approximations by looking at the mass removal over time and just looking at what's in the water over time, just based on how much chlorophyll, the total nitrogen number, how much of that can actually be pulled out in addition to what's going on in the system already. It's a little hazardous to say, yeah, that's going to work, but in terms of the range,
But I think you could say with some confidence that 2 million oysters, you're going to see more effect
Yeah.
at 2 million than 1 million.
and
Fair
200 samples instead of 50.
And it sounds like the sampling will be more effective to show a difference in September. So maybe that's where you should maximize your sampling. And go on. It's not season-wise number of samples, it's the sampling you do within.
It has to be comparable to whatever was done historically.
Okay, Wynn, and then over here.
I wasn't clear from what you said earlier that how many years it would take to get enough sampling experience to make these determinations.
Right, well, we have to have the data to come up with tables like this. This is for total nitrogen. I mean, the current plan with SMAS would for one station for LP2, which is what this is based on, they'd have 75 samples by the end of 3 years.
3 years, okay.
So 75 samples is, it's getting up there.
Good number. Okay.
Is there any impact on the benthic flux to or from the muck that's underlying these oysters?
To the oysters?
Well, will they change the amount of flux that's going in and out of the muck?
Yeah, locally.
Which way?
Well, so a percentage of the nitrogen that they're feeding, they're excreting as ammonium right in the surface. So that's going into the water column. Then the biodeposits are, either in the bags for a while, then shaken out. They'll be deposited. Some percentage of that is going to be recycled back into the water column as ammonium or nitrate. But if there's complete denitrification, some portion will be lost permanently.
But that particular amount is included in your net flux of however many grams per oyster, half a gram per oyster, or whatever it was.
Yeah, so these analyses are just taking what's potentially being pulled out. It's not new nitrogen, it's nitrogen that was already in organic form in the water column. And yeah, I mean, what they're doing is they're rapid recyclers. They're going to take organic matter out of the water column and turn it into bioavailable nitrogen too, simultaneously. So it's really site-specific and based on the conditions of the environment to the degree that there's going to be net loss or localized increases.
John, it's a great segue to my question, which is sort of the spatial aspect of this. I'm assuming that it's important to find an area where you're going to do this, where you potentially have that anoxic zone below it to maybe be able to get some of this denitrification potentially. And then the other question is, I'm also assuming the pond's not completely homogeneous now in terms of its nitrogen concentration within the pond. And to do this most effectively, is there a place in the pond that's better versus worse in terms of inputs to the pond so that you can intercept more nitrogen as it makes its way through the pond?
Yeah, and I talked to Brian Hauser, email exchange with him about about locations, and it's in his monitoring proposal, that little circle I drew somewhere in here. You know, kind of, you know, up around between LP 1 and 2, you know. Thought was, you know, this area in here may be an area to focus on, because it's not down in an area that has lower concentrations, has perhaps some eelgrass habitat trying to sustain itself down in here, and it's in a poorly flushed area with perhaps higher concentrations of algae food.
Yep.
So,
Jeff?
I just have a two-part question on the cost. Is there a cost for when you take the shellfish out and take them to the depuration area? Is that included in the cost there? Or is there a cost associated with, dealing with the shellfish at that point?
well, so depuration can occur. You can take the shellfish out and have a closed area and just throw them on the bottom, and then open them for people to harvest at some point, to tong or dredge or whatever you're going to do. Or you can keep them in gear. You'd have to get the densities right and put them, like Ron was saying, you could put them in places offshore that have existing licenses for gear. They have different costs associated with them, so they're not necessarily reflected. These are general estimates of the number of hours just to get the gear out, to get them somewhere.
Okay. And then the second one, just because I don't know enough about the whole shellfish process. After I know this is the pilot project, so after the 3-year plan, as you would try to look to implement this as a long-term, solution in a watershed, is that cost similar to what the town would put in every 3 years to do the same thing, or is it less because you've created your own seed? Or I'm just trying to figure out, say if you were going to implement this as a long-term solution in Little Pond, you've done the pilot part for the 3 years to get your analysis to see what kind of removal you get, and then if you were going to take it and then carry it to the next step, where you're going to be looking at what that cost would be to continually to do that, to achieve that percent removal? I mean, is it the same, or is it less, or is it possibly more, or?
Are you asking if there's like a cumulative change in the effectiveness of it?
No. Like say you determine
You've already bought the cages in the boat,
Yeah, right.
And you know what you're doing. You don't have to spend any time thinking anymore.
Yeah, once you get
But you may put 3 times as many oysters on.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I guess my point is that say you determine that you're going to get 10% removal, and you figure that, 1.5 million or 1 million oysters is a good, that's what you want to do each year. What is the town, or what should the town be considering with regards to, okay, we know this is a good viable spot, this is working, we want to do it, we want to obviously invest capital each year or number of years, or is it, once you pay this, you've kind of established that area, and there's very little money that you have to establish to buy new seed to feed those pots or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so there's the initial cost, the capital investment, which is a big chunk of this. And then you're talking seed and labor until you need to replace gear. So the actual annual costs that recurs is relatively low. And I didn't show that. I could.
We got that. Between now and the end of April, what do you need from us? I don't need this right now, but we need this real soon. What do you need from us, and when do you need it? What do you need from SMAS, and when do you need it? What do you need from DMF, and when do you need it? The commitment we've made to the town is this is going to happen this year.
Right.
And we want to know real early if there's a roadblock or any problem at any point between now and May.
I can respond briefly to that. I've already requested information from SMAS. It's not going to be the end of the world if that doesn't come in tomorrow.
Good.
There's time.
Because it's not.
Because the world will have ended a long time ago, perhaps. But that's been taken care of. I've met with DMF. We've discussed the permitting issues and the work that's ahead to do that. And that's going to be completed this month, and they have agreed to work this into their schedule.
Is that a fair statement? Okay.
Yeah. The things that need to get done and that I need some help from the town, from members of the town, are the questions that you asked about.
Where's it going to go?
Where are we going to go? What's the plan? Or maybe it's a series of sites that will be determined as needed. And the other is a little more information on enforcement. I've already talked to Chuck Martinson about enforcement during the project and during depuration. I just need to get some more specifics from him, but I think he'll be able to provide those quickly. Did I miss anything?
Well, I'm a little nervous about DEP. I mean, the whole premise of this thing is they're going to okay it at the beginning, during, and end as far as what kind of nitrogen removal credit we're going to get here. And
right.
I haven't gotten the sense that the discussions with DEP have gotten into any great detail yet. Is that?
Have you?
Have you?
Yeah, I met with Brian Dudley.
Okay.
Yeah.
I spent time with him to go over this. He was, in general, I mean, if I can say this, supportive. He was optimistic about it. He said it will be very interesting to see what the demonstration project yields in terms of the effectiveness and how to monitor this. He didn't provide any specifics on what criteria or what kind of performance the project would have to show to get credit or whatever. We talked about being able to measure a change. And so it's important to have the historical data and to have the right number of observations throughout the project to be able to say we're 95% confident that this number is really real. And that's what DEP would be looking for.
Okay.
That's something that, by the way, the TMDL is not based on anything like that. It's based on one number. So I would be pretty confident that if you can probably beat the confidence on that.
Good. Good. Any other comments, or just anybody else from the public or the committee? Jerry.
Quick question. We didn't, and maybe it's immaterial, is there any nitrogen uptake during the depuration depending on where we put it?
Yep.
And I don't know if you addressed that, and maybe until we know, because if we put it in another impaired estuary that we can put it in, there may be secondary nitrogen uptake.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I've thought of that. If you put it in an area that you want to
Clean up?
West Falmouth.
But it would have to be approved.
Hey,
Scott.
The town would pretty much get started in April and May. There are a lot of logistics, including getting seed, because that's something that you usually want to order right around now. And is it clear that the town's going to manage and operate this demonstration farm?
It is.
So the town's going to...
Well, the town's going to try to, might have to do contracting out. I don't know if we have enough people to do everything. I think that's the next step.
Yeah,
they're coming in with a plan.
They'll be contracting out, but it's under the town's
auspices.
Auspices, yeah.
They'll leave
Big word.
volunteers in this, too.
Thank you, George. One other piece that you alluded to that actually hasn't been nailed down, and that's access. Because obviously there's a lot more involved now than there was with the pilot test we did this past year. So your discussion on access was with individual property owners, or do you have a preference? She showed about 5 places.
Right. So there's town property where there's going to be a light recreational access.
Yeah, going to be, but not by May.
Right.
What else you got?
That's one of those things.
Yeah.
And I've discussed that with Conservation Commission.
But it won't do you any good by May, so.
Right.
But we own the site.
Yeah, there's physical access if it's legal. People launch and retrieve boats there.
We carried a boat from was it Shore Road to the beach there and put in that way, and that's hard work. It's not impossible to get a 14, 16-foot boat across without an outboard on it, and then go from there. Mooring a skiff for a growing season is an idea, and you can access that with a dinghy and work on it, so you wouldn't have to keep going in and out. So the access, if you could do that, the access would really be important during either a storm event where you have to move stuff out, or you could also sink the stuff. And it is a fairly protected area. In the beginning of the year and at the end of the growing season, taking gear in and out. So there are a number of roads that dead end there. There's salt marsh, but there's also some areas where there's not a whole lot of marsh. There's, you know, a storm, it's at Mayflower, that pretty much goes right to the water's edge. But it's not optimal. There's not a boat ramp. You can't really run a big farm there without getting access.
I don't have a problem with Narragansett Street out of there. They've used that access through stage the last series of tests.
Thank you.
There's your answer.
So,
good.
The Mayflower is very mucky, so you have to dredge that area.
But Narragansett Street's good.
Yeah, they have a storm drain in the town already built, so it wouldn't be that big of a problem to have the town, it's all concreted, make some type of ramp.
Terrific.
There's already access to the green lawn right to it.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, that would need Conservation Commission
Yes, you've met
process.
You've met
but-
with the Concom. Did you bring that up?
We did. We had a preliminary meeting with the Concom, and we are supposed to go in front of them this month, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, with an NOI.
Oh,
Good.
okay.
Beautiful.
I have another question, comment, I guess. I'm also on Mashpete's Conscom, and we've had a tremendous problem with local opposition to aquaculture in some areas because of the aesthetic concerns.
Yeah, we've been reading.
And I can imagine you may run into the same situation here because you're looking at an area which is, you know, populated right up to the water. Have you started working that, or is that something you could bulldoze right past?
That from TV.
In the Heights Mara Vista, you don't bulldoze right past anything.
Yes, well, I was maybe using
But
one term.
you could probably answer that.
Agricultural right in that spot. The town has already built the entire area. It's a storm drain. So it's a, I don't know the dimensions, 3-foot dimension, concrete down, with all rocks right into the water. So there's no bushing or brushes or anything.
But he's talking about the floating gear out in the water and
We've got people that are half a mile away who are complaining about
Yeah, that's just an issue.
an agriculture project whose total extent is under the water, not like this, which is
Yeah.
a tremendous amount of floating.
Well, New Seabury, it's not.
that's right. This is not New Seabury.
Yeah. It's a potential problem,
It
but it hasn't been a problem yet.
Until something gets out there, we're not going to hear about it. I think. So, but then we will.
And one approach is not to start off with 10 million oysters, to start maybe with 500,000, 2 million,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and work with the community to
Right.
right.
accept it.
Okay. Any further observations, George?
I would just strictly suggest that since there's plenty of pictures, illustrations of what it is at different levels, that they might generate a few pictures and Photoshop in what it would look like so that people would get a good idea of that. They'd either be up in arms or shaking their hand.
Paul, would it make sense to have a public meeting on this sometime in April or May, or
For what?
to show the folks in the area what we've just seen tonight, as far as what this is going to look like?
I can put it out on the internet. Most of our members are on the internet.
Fine.
Mr. Chairman, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had a meeting with, was the East Falmouth group? We went to one of your meetings?
Yeah,
Early on, and we discussed it.
Correct.
I don't know if we showed any pictures.
It was just the beginning of it.
So, but it was
They've been
very
informed.
supportive.
They've been informed every step. Ron's kept us
Right.
abreast.
Good.
And the emails have gone out. There's been a lot of interest. And a lot of members did come down and see the pages, and nobody opposed it.
Yeah, it was pretty supportive environment.
Good. All right. Good. I think we're there.
Okay.
We need deadlines and things that you need us to do or demand from others. but we do want this to happen this year for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be good to have a working meeting discussing how it would be pulled off.
Great.
Right.
I mean, you can we can get the permits, the approvals, and then you have to get the gear, get the people that are going to actually do it.
Maybe there should be a sort of a working meeting before you actually go before the Conservation Commission, so we can sort of review the key pieces.
Right.
And I think that you shouldn't use slides that show 5 million oysters if we're only going to do 1 million. We need to gear your presentation to what's actually going to be.
Right.
Matt?
Do we have an RFP in the works for the
We need to negotiate a
contract?
contract. We may not need to do an RFP. We might be able to negotiate, but that's the.
For operating?
Yeah, I mean, that was the next step
That was the
after
next
this,
step.
was
Okay.
to go forward with
Operating contract.
implementation. And
Okay.
the RFP said, if we're pleased with our contractor, we don't have to negotiate.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have to go out to public.
Right.
We can renegotiate.
Were we going to receive copies of the second report tonight? I was under the impression we were.
Steve was going to bring him, and Steve's not here.
That's a good point. Okay.
No.
All right.
We got them on the internet.
We got them electronically.
It's called the second memo, technical.
Yeah,
That has
okay.
most of, that has all this information and more.
Yes.
And then there's another management plan being developed based on information from tonight and that.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Mr. Chair, in the tech memo too, there is not the pricing information, unless I,
Yeah, I didn't see it either.
Right. It's not in the tech memo.
okay,
It's coming.
It'll be in the management plan.
it'll be in the minutes.
It's less technical.
Would,
Well, we need to-
That's,
That is not.
John, would you want to send us electronically your set of slides?
certainly.
Okay,
good idea.
that would help.
Hey, Ron,
Yes, so you're thinking of getting 1 million seed in the water in the spring, is that the goal?
that's the goal.
So, and the sourcing of the seed like Scott brought up, I mean, that's gonna require some very active work now.
That's what we were remarking about.
You have a good month to order that if you're getting it from a hatchery. Getting larger seed, as you know, is going to be a little more difficult. I talked to Fisher's Island the other day, and he said by the end of the month, if you want half-inch seed, he can.
Steve could handle like 1 million.
Yeah.
Have you talked to Rick Carney over on the vineyard with that new, the state facility where he's producing seed?
Yeah, you were talking about that earlier. I talked to Rick a lot. I'll have to talk to him about that facility. What's your idea on that?
Have him raise seed for us.
But isn't he bound by the?
The state is in control, right?
Yes, it's our hatchery.
It's your
We're just
hatchery.
giving them access.
Right.
But
And
we
he's only
possibly
using a
could work
small
something
portion,
out.
right?
Okay, I mean, my previous experience with Rick is that his hands are kind of tied to
Yeah, his
supply.
first priority is to the
Yeah.
5 towns on the
Yeah.
island.
Yeah, we'll do what you have to do in a month, it sounds like.
Yeah, and you also have local growers here. You have Todd here who has upweller systems right in CPIT, who is an option. And you'd have to go through DMF to get permitted to do that, but
So you might buy some from several different sources.
you could do that, yeah.
Okay, I think that would be good.
There's a lot of work to do by you and by
Yes.
everybody else. We appreciate
Okay.
where we are so far.
Right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're
Mr.
done, Joe.
Chairman, a very important point.
Oh, no doubt.
This is a pilot program.
Yeah.
And it serves to benefit the town in
Right.
general.
Right.
If it works, it can be applied to other places.
True.
The public has to understand that we can't stay the way we are. We gotta change. And that's why it's important. So people have to be for this,
Yes.
okay?
We hope so. That's why we're here.
Yep.
And you. Thank you. Next item on the agenda will be a update on the technical assistant eco toilet consultant, and this is just to say the ad ran and what else?
The ad ran, and I'm in, not part.
Okay.
Because we're under public notice.
Third item. On-site denitrification system draft task description with George Hoyfelder.
Thank you for that. That was very, very good. I enjoyed that. You learned a lot.
Thank you for coming.
Why can't they just is it the competitive interest, not interfere with the private market, or is it
Well, public domain.
Disparaging.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I could feel something under there, so we were pulling away. Going to cat under that. Its tail.
Okay. Right,
If it's on the web, it's everybody's at this point.
Well, I have it should be up.
Even if it's an auction.
Interesting, good report.
All right, on-site denitrification with George Heufelder.
Okay. I understood that my presence here was for sort of open
Yeah.
discussion on how a demonstration project might be formed for denitrification systems. So I'll go over briefly 3 points. What we know.
Can I just give a
Yeah,
little background for,
sure.
for the folks who weren't here before?
I was wound up.
And where we are.
It's no longer rehearsed.
Should I, you want to let him go?
No,
Look,
no.
Hold that back.
Okay, the on-site denitrification piece is one that is in our Article 17, but we have not spent much time on it. I think we've all recognized it deserves more attention than we've been giving it. We started out by thinking another RFP would be a good idea. We've come to the conclusion that having a technical assistant, which we assume we're going to have after January, would be the way to go. Having our own in-house person doing it, whoever that may happen to be. But the other piece of that is it will require some money at some point. But the immediate problem is to give the tech person some guidance as to what direction and how fast to go. And that's why George is here, because he is the guru in Massachusetts, at least, and probably beyond our borders, of on-site denitrification systems. And
I think of the Western world.
The Western world. maybe
Getting a little carried away.
maybe the Eastern world. So, you're on.
Okay, so what should a demonstration project look like? I'll tell you what we know, what we don't know, what we should know. What we know about denitrification systems, I think, is fairly well out there in the public domain. Our department maintains a website where you could go on and find out any system on Cape Cod technology, how it's presently working in the town, both for very small scale up to 10,000 gallons. That would be cluster systems down to the on-site in somebody's backyard. What we don't know is how these systems might be optimized under better management than they are in Cape Cod or in the legal paradigm that occupies Massachusetts. For instance, Massachusetts requires for on-site systems up to 10,000 gallons, generally 19 milligrams per liter, which they believe represents 50% removal of nitrogen. So we kind of know what on-site systems can do, and the most sort of anywhere from 19 milligrams per liter down to less than 5. And there is only one system I know that has a track record on Cape Cod of less than 5, and that would be the nitrites. When we start to get off the on-site and start to cluster houses together and put in 20, 30, or 10 homes, then it gets a little less clear what they can do. What they presently do, you can again find out through many public domain, our website as well as others. However, in Massachusetts, since they were only required to get less than or get 50% removal, generally that's what they'll get. Massachusetts never experimented in or demanded that, say, systems in the 2,000 gallon range get less than 5. If they did, then we wouldn't have all those systems out there getting 19 now. If they were regulatory hammers to get them to 5, they would. It would just cost more. And presently, we don't know what that cost would be because it's never been pushed to that. We have some indication, the Nitrex being the only one in Massachusetts that I know of less than 5. And we know that from 2 cluster systems that are here on Cape Cod and some other data from across the country. But the ones we know of at Cape Cod, they're performing very well, generally always less than 10, generally less than 5.
Where are they? Can you tell
One
us?
in Mashpee, one in Easton.
Okay.
The one in Mashpee is at that little sort of residential, light commercial mix. The one in Eastham is the same situation.
And how long have they been operating?
One has been operating at least 5 years. I think it's even more than that. That's the one in Mashpee, and it's a pretty
This
good
is
track
PRS,
record.
yeah.
We know that on-site, they'll do pretty much the same. We're testing at the test center. There are a few on-sites out there that are getting less than 5. So we know that that technology can work. But we really don't know of the range of other technologies that are out there on-site. If they were ever forced, say 1,000-gallon systems, forced to get 5, whether they, 1, could, 2, would, because they've never been pushed to that. We know a lot about systems of 10,000 gallons and more because they're under groundwater discharge permit. They have to get less than 10, and if they don't, DEP is there with the hammer. So we know what those generally engineered systems, not off-the-shelf systems, can do. So what a demonstration project would look like, I think has to be discussed in that sort of background. Now there's, as I said, most of the data are available publicly. There's probably 5 good demonstration projects across the country. There's one in La Pine, there's the stuff being done in the Chesapeake, there's the stuff being done in New Jersey. Of course, Cape Cod has a very active and always iterating, changing database that is up and readily available to anybody who can push a button on a computer. And I forget where the other one is. But it's probably down in Chesapeake, some area down in that area, because we monitor those data points all the time. And I think a very good source for information on costing and things was done. The Cape Cod Commission did a report through Mike Giggy and the Water Collaborative and put together some cost per pound of nitrogen, the things that were suggested in your report. And I think that was a very good report because it used local data. It actually went to the people paying the bills, went to the people who paid for the design and the build and the operation of the systems, and I think that was very valuable. So I'm not sure what the intent of town meeting was or what your intent would be at doing a demonstration project. I certainly think whatever is done should be done in sort of considering what things are feasible / legal / permittable. On the fringe, what's out there on the fringe? Well, Florida's done a passive denitrification project. They've got some small scale stuff doing upflow filters. They call it passive. Passive means they have to have only 1 pump. And they have some very promising sort of strategies that employ very much like the nitrix, an upflow through a carbon source or something to, denitrify nitrified wastewater. And I spoke to individuals involved in that project, saw what you had sent me. So you had talked to Dr. Smith today, actually. And they're thinking it's ready for prime time. They're going to roll some out to houses and actually put some in people's backyards. There are some problems that we experience here on Cape Cod that are not ambient to Florida. Some of those deal with, for instance, the nitrix can be configured for a single pass through very little sand, nitrify the effluent, and then denitrify it in the box. Well, what we find here in Cape Cod, because of the limited alkalinity in our water, that initial just pass has to, you've either got to provide inorganic carbonate, or you've got to denitrify before you go into that filter, so you get some of your alkalinity back to balance the requirements of denitrification and nitrification. So I don't know where you're going with this, but that's sort of the backdrop of what you have out there as far as compiling information and that being a task associated with this. I would say that's a 10-minute chore. I mean, I really would. I don't want to be flip about it, but the data are so available. Right. And the assessments of the different technologies might take a day to do. I mean, most people who do this all the time could say, yeah, these work better than this, work better than this. And they might look at your winters and say, yeah, okay, we're going to take a fixed film over something that's fixed activated sludge or anything like that. But, so, where do you want to go?
How much can you do it for?
Do what? Right now, you should know, I just found out because I was getting a number of calls to the test center recently about technologies thinking about coming and test. The EPA has got some sort of, I wrote it down somewhere, it's like an initiative to identify new technologies for, I think they want to have a retrofit that's less than $5,000 and new construction less than $25,000, has to get less than 5 milligrams per liter nitrogen. And I've gotten 3 calls already from companies that say, you know, we're thinking of going for this sort of proposal and we need a test site. And I said, wow, that's great, good business.
Well, the conversation this committee's had, and its predecessor committee, which you were involved in, was that if you're not talking 5 or less, it's not really something
it's not best available technology.
It's not the best available, and to meet the needs of these estuaries, 5 or less is where we kind of have to be for a cluster. So the premise, I guess, would be identify the ones that do that and put them in the ground here.
Well, it's even on site too, right? Less than 5 milligrams per liter. You said cluster, but
a cluster on site, individual on site or cluster on site,
right.
But either way on site.
Right.
So I believe any engineered system that is sort of, you know, it becomes cost effective after a certain point, which that report that Mr. Gigi did clearly points out. But really, if you have to get less than 5 and you make somebody get less than 5, they will. It's just a matter of how much money they'll have to throw at it.
In terms of what's approved and on the shelf now, it's only Nitrex? Is that?
Well, that's the only one approved for on-site, and it's not approved at that level. It's piloted at that level, but I believe it's conditional approval is for 19 milligrams per liter. I don't think they've got enough systems out there to be able to go beyond pilot with the 5 milligrams per liter or less.
If I could segue just on that point. However, 2, 3, whatever technologies that we think have the potential to get to less than 5, what kind of monitoring needs to be done, and would you be involved or DEP be involved so that if we do a pilot project somewhere in Falmouth, it's monitored in a way that develops the data that will help us theoretically move that system to the approved column?
Well, if it's in piloting, it's very specific right within that, what the piloting monitoring should be.
Okay.
And I can't imagine that pilot monitoring would not meet the requirement that somebody would for the very same purpose that you're saying.
Okay.
Who collects those data might be a critical point.
Okay.
What we generally do at the test center is to say to a vendor who's coming into the area, and some have availed themselves of this, say, look, third party is third party. It's very valuable to have that third party stamp. And we actually offer a service where we'll say,
we being Barnstable County Health.
Barnstable County, through the test center, saying if you're within 25 miles of us, we'll take your samples for you, we'll charge you for it, of course, and we'll recover our costs because the taxpayer shouldn't be paying for these. But here's the deal, here's what we would do. And there are 2 vendors now that are saying, you know, that's worth it because it has we'll issue a report saying we took the samples, but that's not required by them. And I don't think it would be absolutely required by DEP. They would just say, monitor at this frequency. Because when somebody does operate and monitor a system, they're saying through their license of operation that they're doing and monitoring properly. And, you know, anybody can be dishonest as well. But, you know, you're not going to put your license on the line for something. Where would that be going?
How many years of monitoring would they need before they'd say this is established and approvable?
I think that in context of what you would be talking about, a demonstration project, that would be somewhat looked at as what's the engineering principle at work here? Is it some consumable thing? For instance, Nitrex, the big question has always been, how long will it last? And if it doesn't last very long, how easy is it to replace? So I don't think I could throw that out, because the law says one thing, but we're here in Falmouth doing demonstration projects. You're under kind of a different umbrella where you can sit and get a little wiggle in there. If there was something that had a sound engineering principle, let's say a membrane bioreactor, somehow somebody comes up with one that gets 5 or less than 5, and they do this consistently, and it's shown over a year, and there's no consumable piece to it. There's an exchange thing that you have to do, but that's pretty much pull one out, put the new one in. Then those are all big ifs. Then I think DEP would look at it and say, well, it's not something that's burning up, it's not something that's consumed, it's not something that reasonably could change over, as long as you've got a good year's worth of data through the extreme temperature times that we'd generally expect here. Then you might get a little bit more mileage of saying, yeah, okay, if we did 20 of these and we did these over a year, maybe they'd say, okay, yeah, that's a sound principle, because they do very much the same thing on large-scale treatment plants. And a large-scale treatment plant is just something not out of the box, it's engineered. It has the same problems associated with it as a small system, in that if something is going wrong, you'll see it. And you'll either be able to correct it, or you'll say, well, that one didn't work, take that dog home, it didn't hunt, you know? So.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Steve.
to follow up on that, so that's a year of 20 systems.
Well, you
How
want at
long-
least that over the cold period, particularly if it was a biological
But it's not a month and it's not 10 years. How long would it be before you would know what systems to put to that test?
Well, you know
I mean, you
now.
implied these membrane bioreactors are coming along. I mean, could you start that year now, or do you have to wait a year to start it?
Remember, I used that as an example, and there was a big if. I don't
Is
know.
there
about
any?
that.
Is there anything that would be reasonable to start
I
now?
don't think there's anything approaching except upflow carbon filters like the nitrites. The membrane bioreactors I've seen get less than 10, but I've not seen them get less than 5 on an on-site level.
But this EPA thing you mentioned
Yes.
might generate such
Sure,
a
that's
technology.
a challenge. That's what they call
Right.
it. It is a challenge.
And it might generate something within a year?
No.
It might, but if I was a betting man, I'd say if it was gonna be out there, wouldn't we have seen some of it out there?
You
I
get
mean,
a-
just because EPA is willing to put $130,000 in somebody's pocket to try something, you know, if that was the magic bullet and somebody had it in their holster, I think they'd be using it by now.
That's right.
Somewhere, we would have heard some inkling of it. I mean, I'm not saying.
You're probably right. So
You don't
you're
know.
saying there isn't anything.
Other
that I
than,
know of.
other than the nitrates.
Yeah, but I'm constantly amazed at what ingenuity is encouraged by money.
See it.
So George, you know, I went and I was doing some analysis of the data from the test center, and if you look, some of the systems, there are like 4 or 5 of them, if you looked at minimums and first quartile data, it looks like there are a number of systems that they don't necessarily get under 5 consistently, but there were 4 or 5 systems that I don't need to name that seem to, at some level, be able to get under 5.
I have to ask, was that test center data or data reported on a website from all the systems?
That was
around the
data reported from all the systems.
Okay.
That was the,
Okay, so there you
The
have
whisker
to do,
diagram.
which is what we did. We at one point said, okay, let's look at all, a certain number of systems are getting very much less than 15, down to 10, some that, we focused around 10. And then let's look at some are getting up around 50. And we said, what do we got in there? Do we have people who dilute their water down here in 10? Because we don't know. You know, individual on-site systems underline the word individual. And some people take, you know, 2-hour showers, for God's sakes, you know, and they feel clean, but they've diluted their wastewater. So what we found in that investigation is that about 1/3 of those that are down in that area where you'd say, boy, that system really works, are posers. They simply dilute their wastewater, not purposefully, but they do. They're using more wastewater, more water. And then on the other side, you have some posers also. that, you know, the ones that are really high in nitrogen, some of them are, you know, they're like letting it yellow before, or mellow before they flush it down. You know, and, you know, there are a lot of people in this room probably do too, and if you say you didn't, you probably lie about other things too. But that's a fact, that there's people who are gonna do that. They're afraid their system will fail, they know they have an on-site system that's tricky, so they're gonna, you know, concentrate their waste, or they're, who knows, there are people on Cape Cod, I can't believe this myself, but they put their laundered water out into their backyard. I don't know anybody who does that, but I'm sure. But so, what we've found, what I believe that real, those ones that creep down below 5 occasionally, they are so rare. And we have not that they can't be investigated, but we have not found any real clear indication that there is a strategy of these systems, and they range from the FAST to BioClear,
Yes.
even sand filters, that have performed in that area. They don't do it consistently, and we don't know whether there's any principle that could be exploited that would keep them down there. And if it was, it would probably require quite a bit of management. What we do know on on-site systems is, you know, my mantra is always, they remove 50% of nitrogen 70% of the time. I've moved that to 77% of the time because it has improved over time because we keep beating people up. But we know, based on things that happen in Pine, things that happen at other demonstration projects, that the best management practices on the present set of technologies out there might, and this is a huge might, get you 2 to 3 more milligrams per liter better performance. Now, by better management, I mean more consistent monitoring, making sure that people are really watching their systems, that they're operated and maintained properly. That is my best guess. You could maybe squeak 2 to 3 more milligrams per liter better performance. I base that on the fact that the Lapine project had some better performance than we've seen before. Not that, 2 to 3 milligrams per liter better than some of the technologies we're very familiar with. And when we investigated that, we find out that, yeah, well, the vendors were told before they went in that it would be a demonstration project, so guess what they're gonna pay real good attention to. And they maintained those systems during that period. So all of those things were, to me, parallel sort of sayings of better management. So better management might get you there a little bit better, but certainly not going to drive the present technologies below 5 except nitrate. Okay. I don't sell nitrates, I'll say that.
Jerry.
Trying to think forward on a demonstration project. I don't think we're going to be, I don't know, we're not going to be paying $20,000 or $15,000 for 20 installations. No. It may be reasonable that we pick 1 or 2, whether it's an individual, maybe a cluster in the right neighborhood, and put substantial money in there, and then monitor that in a reasonable effort. Would that be a type of demonstration project, even though it wouldn't take some from the conditional to provisional to the full? It would set sights on 2 or 3 things of promising technology, and then the other adaptive management, that if other things work, then the bar may be a little bit higher than 3 or 5.
Can I answer? I personally, not on your committee, so I'm not a voting member here, but I personally don't think that the committee ought to put a demonstration project in. I think it would be better money spent to try to find areas where some sort of cluster that assume get 5 milligrams per liter, in which you have some costing information, could reap some sort of benefit. That being saying, okay, let's look at an area that needs to get less than 5. Let's assume we have a technology now, even if there is only one vendor, to say, we would like you to develop the cost proposal down to the bolts and nuts of what it would take to do this here. And get that cost, and that would be tie that individual, that company, that consultant to a very tight margin of error and say, we really need to know. And you have some cost information on the one out in Mashpee and the one in Eastham. If you wanted to know how they work, the data are available. They're taking monthly samples in Mashpee for a long time. And if you really wanted to know, you'd maybe say, okay, we'll take extra samples there just to get those data, or ask DEP to require them to take them. I didn't mean that last one. But, I mean, assume that they could do, and they have gotten to that, the technology to that point. And I don't know whether that's now generic, that sort of upflow box of wood chips is generic or not. But you could ask any engineer, say, okay, if we were going to employ that technology, we need somebody to develop the exact cost proposal. I don't know, but the term engineer could tell you more than I what that percent of engineering could be, because we really still don't know that. And we've had people say, and I've heard consultants say, oh, you could do seacoast shores and it would only be X. But, you know, you don't have down to the wire what the real costs are. That may or may not be of use to you, but I'd say it's got to be at least as good a use to you as going out and trying to put one of these things in on private land. And
Right.
But there is sort of a cap that these on-site cluster systems have a max of 10,000 gallons. We would be looking at a cluster system with a D-Night application, but less than 10,000 gallons.
You could. I don't know why you'd constrain yourself to that.
Well, let me ask you, roughly how many houses or housing units constitutes 10,000 gallons?
Well, it's 110 gallons per bedroom, so you just 110.
So you're talking about how many bedrooms?
Right. That's how the design flow is, 110 gallons per day per bedroom.
But there's no limit. You could have two next to each other.
It's just, yes.
You could have 100 next to each other.
I don't think DEP would allow it. Just to go under, just to avoid the permitting issue.
Why would you? See, because although this is a demonstration,
right?
If this is a demonstration, you have to demonstrate what would it be in context of your comprehensive wastewater management plan. And believe me, no matter how small your plants are in an area that's under comprehensive wastewater management, it's going to be a groundwater discharge permit. Am I right, Tom? It would be. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, over 10,000, you're saying under 10,000 would still need a discharge permit?
Well, if you're using these in context of a comprehensive wastewater plan.
But a demonstration project would not be.
Right, but applying.
10,000 gallons, you figure 30 houses.
30 houses.
Okay.
But the technology is very well proven. You can get less than 5, and with a cluster system that's less than 10,000. There's nothing really to prove. You just, there's a number of them out there, and so it comes to, how the demonstration project. What is the objective? How do you want to deploy it? And you could think, okay, so 30 houses, a couple cluster systems. And then you think, okay, Seacoast Shores, it's going to take 13 cluster systems.
Yeah,
and the study's already done.
That's right. We already covered that. Okay.
But if you need to do a cluster system, then find a good spot to do it. Try to figure out what size it should be.
But the concern would be cost, and that seems to be the missing element here.
Yes, and 30 houses, you're presuming 3 bedrooms per house, but lots of areas are condos. Okay, so they don't necessarily have 3 bedrooms. They're 2 bedrooms.
Right. That's why I gave you the bedroom number.
Yeah, that's right.
The majority of these are condos.
Right.
Working towards threshold 30 houses.
Okay.
Steve, then Matt. Yeah.
Yes, cost. Now that the Nitrex patent has run out, is it possible to do a Walmart in any sense?
I'm not a lawyer, nor do I pretend to be.
I mean, to create some kind of competition of
the public domain, certainly. If
2 or more people bidding against each other.
Yeah. Okay, Matt.
Do we have, what if we wanted to do individual on-site systems like a Nitrex? Do we have any test data on that?
Yeah, well, we've tested at the test center. There are a few of them out there.
Yeah.
Generally, the test center is pretty consistently less than 5. There's some peaks depending on on-site system. When you do on-site, remember the nitrix is something that has to have a nitrifier ahead of it, and that's the temperature sensitive piece of it. And that's also where individual on-site systems comes into play, because it's easy, relatively easy to kill a nitrifier if you're the only one feeding it. So cluster systems tend to balance that out from the data I've seen, but everything we've seen says it'll be fine. I mean,
The
it's all
on-site
the
ones or
yeah,
the
it's
individual
all the
ones would be?
nitrifier.
The individual ones would be
Right.
fine.
Jeff, then Jerry.
Just a quick comment. I think that for a demonstration project, you might be better off trying to do an individual. The problem with a cluster is you have to remember that now you're talking a collection system and you're talking about trying to find space to discharge, and those are all the things that most of those types of projects are already struggling with anyways, is where am I gonna, now I gotta get a permit and where am I gonna be discharging it? Whereas an individual for a demonstration project is really, you're trying to show how that system might perform.
And what it would cost.
Well, what I'm hearing from George is the individual systems have been pretty well established. And we don't need to find out how well they work, and we know how much they cost. To the extent there's any savings in doing any of this, it's going to be in the cluster line, and that's where the information is lacking.
Then I think that for a demonstration project, for an idea of like a demonstration is, I think you want to then focus on where do you have a system that's already servicing that kind of flow, and then you want to upgrade it to.
I'm glad you brought up that point, because
of the technologies.
Yes.
we've had a conversation with the Falmouth Housing Authority, Salt Sea on Scranton Avenue, which for reasons Jerry can probably tell you, they can't hook up to the sewer.
They could.
But they don't, apparently it's cheaper for them not to, because they're not.
It's cheaper for them not to, but they could.
They could. So they're pursuing upgrading. Right now they have cesspools. What they're proceeding with an upgrade that would involve septic tanks and leaching field, and that they would be, from our conversations with the head of it, would be happy to be a site if we wanted to incorporate a Nitrex or whatever into their construction of this new system they're putting in.
Are they all those single-story
They're very
units?
30, 40 years old.
Why don't we tear them down and build something?
Bob Murray would love to, but
Apparently
But what would we be
There
showing?
could be other cluster systems. I know, like, Treetops has one. I don't know, it's outside, it's not a cluster system. There is Barbara Snyder's neighborhood. I think that you probably could tell us what the cluster systems are, right?
Well, yeah, the database will show you where the
mean
ones that have advanced treatment.
Right.
And then we could investigate that same concept of what does it take to upgrade it from what they have to what we think we want to demonstrate,
Right.
5 or less.
There are probably others. The only reason this one comes to mind is they want to do it. It's all publicly owned. We don't have to chase we don't have to chase a bunch of owners around to get permission. And as long as it doesn't.
But what's the question we're asking? It's just how much will it cost?
I think, well, the premise here would be the research has pretty well been done. We would want to put out something by way of an RFP or a request for a bids or something that says, here's the situation. What can you put in the ground? How big would it be? How much would it cost? And then go do it.
So the question would be, how much does it cost? Because we know it works. We know you could do it.
Yeah.
And we know approximately what it would do.
Right.
And then my question was that part of the deal would be that there would have to be monitoring by, I think conveniently, a third party, so that we knew that the data we collected would be defendable.
Forgive me for going back to the individual systems, because I'm thinking about how do we fit this in an actual implementation phase if we ever get to that point where we go to somebody and we say, hey, hopefully you can do a composting system or you can do a denitrifying system. Are we going to say at that point, do the Nitrex, or just give them the figures for the Nitrex, the cost for the Nitrex? Is that what we would do?
That's
and
why
give
I
them
want to
a
create
menu?
A consultant could do that.
Yeah.
We could ask them to do. The question is, do we want to give them a subsidy to encourage them to go to something they may
Well,
not
well,
want
that's
to.
for the demonstration project. If we're,
That's true, yeah.
but if we just get to the implementation phase, we
Oh,
know they
sorry.
work, and we say
I'm
you can
sorry,
do
right.
do the
Well, remember,
composting or
we know they work.
yeah.
We could say that. However, DEP is going to require a set of monitoring plans which establish in their mind a comfort that you're meeting.
So I assume that's the 62 again.
Well, they're not through, they're piloting for
Mm-hmm.
less than 5 milligrams per liter, so yeah. I would say they're gonna have to do their 12 and then their 50, the same way anybody else does their 12 and their 50.
And isn't the question really the it's fine that we understand that they work, but are
range of their
homeowners going to operate them the same way, and are you going to be able to get that performance from a year-round house or a
Well, you're-
seasonal home? You know,
You're talking about the individual system again.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
We're not
And
talking
I-
about
Those are
individual
good
systems.
points.
But I think that that's,
Yeah.
because I agree with Matt, that I think that it's important to find out what that is, and if you do wanna have that option in your toolbox,
You're gonna have to show that.
you
Yeah.
wanna be able to, anyone could say, oh yeah, this system of any kind, any size, can achieve that. But it's whether that homeowner, are you gonna be able to demonstrate that every homeowner is going to be willing to put in whatever it takes to constantly do that? And is it going to, and is there gonna be?
And maybe for
variability?
this demonstration phase, you offer them the 5,000 incentive that we're doing for the compost.
Right.
And this is why
Yeah.
this is why the Florida system and the work that they're doing down there actually became interesting enough to pursue. They noticed two things when they were doing their work for the Department of Health. They noticed that, and this is Hazen and Sawyer, so they noticed that complicated on-site individual systems do not work very well. So they went and they looked all over the keys and other areas where they installed them because Florida put in regulations, and what they realized was, yeah, they installed them, but then they turned the pumps off because they use electricity. So the design challenge to Hazen and Sawyer was a passive system, one pump or less, and a non-proprietary design. So a design that any engineer could design for any homeowner. So simple, inexpensive, and non-proprietary. And so their whole focus and their model and the work that they're trying to do is to answer some of those questions for individual systems and affordable. So not complicated, affordable. And then a key piece of it for them is also to have a monitoring program that is a consistent monitoring program. So you can watch remotely if these systems are working. You're not relying on the homeowner. Now, these are not systems that are, they've been piloted, prototyped, and now they're installing systems in the ground, but they're not here in Massachusetts. And so one of the things that we've seen is that although Massachusetts has its world of people and companies putting these things in, there's stuff going on in other parts of the country that we may want to be interested in as we're looking a year or two down the road. In the same way that nobody makes eco toilets in the United States. I mean, you can't get a urine diverting toilet made in the United States, but in other parts of the world, they've been doing things. And so part of what we might want to think about is where does that knowledge base fit into what we'd like to pilot, to answer some of these exact questions.
Jerry?
So I think, Matt went back to what can we do on the individual level. I'd like to see, we should look at what existing cluster systems could we retrofit, if maybe there aren't any. And I think the other question is that what Jeff brought up is on all of them, even on the individual, especially the individual ones, those folks may now have a O&M plan that they've never seen before, or a Board of Health has never issued, because now, we need it for compliance. Someone's gonna have to give us periodic and regular data, and we can debate later what that periodic and regular inspection data is. So I think that, but we need to get the systems in, and then we have to figure out what the adequate monitoring program is.
Steve?
George, aren't there a significant number of individual denitrifying systems in Falmouth now?
Oh, sure.
How many? I mean, a
I'd
dozen,
say,
100? Or?
250, maybe 300.
So if you just wanted monitoring, you could monitor those.
But they're
Unless
not
you want
getting
something
year
new.
five.
He's
They're
still
not
getting
getting.
5, so he's getting 19 or more.
19,
They're not
se-
designed
seven-
to.
they're not
Yeah,
designed
they
to
weren't
go
supposed to
to
be
five.
five.
And there aren't reasonable changes you could contemplate making to them to upgrade them?
No, that's what I said. The only thing you might get 2 or 3 milligrams per liter nitrogen
Okay.
difference if you tightly manage them. We manage them in that we require contracts for their operation and maintenance. We require regular monitoring, not as much as DEP might for GMDL compliance. We do that part of it, but we don't go after, like, with a claw if they don't get 19 milligrams per liter. We'll work with the people to try to get them to optimize, but
Well, what's our budget for this demo project?
Well, that's another conversation. We can talk about that, but we don't know how much we're talking about yet, so it's a little premature. But there's no specific line item in Article 17 for this, but there is also the ability to move things around in Article 17, which we've...
But
So-
realistically, it's of the order of 100 or 200,000? I mean, it's not a million.
What are we talking
Article
about?
17 has eco toilets and denitrifying systems together
Yeah,
at $500,000.
We got that.
So they're
But
put
his
together.
question is how much, what's the order of magnitude here?
Oh, to pay, to do it.
Yeah, how much are you and Matt, willing to take out of eco toilets for
Well,
this?
let's not worry about where
Oh,
it's
that's
coming
your
out.
question.
Yeah, this is really an
This is not-
exploratory
Oh, oh, oh.
discussion
This is
tonight.
not-
No, but
It's an important question.
if it's 20,000,
Understood.
that
So
gives
we
you
would
an
get the
upper
order of
limit on how
magnitude
many
here.
systems.
What's the order of magnitude?
Unless you just do an
To do
incentive
what?
for
To do an
$5,000.
installation or no?
Yeah, that's the question, right? The order of magnitude to do a cluster installation?
No, the
No.
order of magnitude of how much we're willing to spend as a committee on the whole project, whether it be incentives or installations or something even more clever. I mean, is it 20,000 or 100,000 or 200,000? It's not a million, right? It's nowhere
You
close
don't
to
have a
that.
million.
It's too early to have that number.
It's too late.
Also, right, no, at 9:30, this is stopping on this topic, but I think where we are is we've had enough input that you could take that original draft you had of the task and revise it in accordance with what you've heard from everybody and come back with that and perhaps including in that an order of magnitude of what kind of money we're talking about to do what, which would solve your issue tonight. But we can't answer.
I don't need the answer right away, but you sure need it before you go
Absolutely.
very
Okay.
far.
Is that a reasonable way to leave this for tonight?
Well, I would recommend, $5,000 incentives.
Okay.
No more than eco toilets.
Okay, any other observations? You can email them to her. I think Ron already did his before he left. But
Just have one thought,
Yeah.
Eric, because you're talking about clusters and all that, and the question about costs, and so, typical cluster system, 10,000 gallons or something, with a discharge permit, you're talking, $1.5 million or something like that, so, maybe something substantial, in that regard. When you think of a demonstration, you think of, if clusters was an answer, and you put bunches of clusters down, it would have to be done quite differently than the parameters that were laid out in a comparative study. One would have to say, oh, well, you put a neighborhood cluster in, and you would have to find a discharge spot right there. You'd have to deal with it, that getting just 5 parts per million would, in a comprehensive way, if it was in a watershed, would get you the compliance agreement from DEP kind of thing. So what could almost be like a challenge grant to find us the cheapest cluster, inexpensive cluster that you could put in and replicate in an area.
One block in Seacoast Shores.
That would be as self-contained as possible.
And we could ask Mashpee to contribute, because I think they'd be very interested in these results. Regionalization, why not regionalization?
That's right. Regionalize the costs, that's what I was
They were hoping to regionalize them in the other direction.
Well, maybe we'd think about that if we can get the data sooner.
Fair enough. All right, I think we've done this one for tonight, and we got a couple more to go here. Springtown meeting article discussion and vote. Little Pond Area Collection System, Boyens Pond Inlet Widening, Eco Toilets. 3 topics, two of which are combined. And Virginia has a draft article to pass around?
Well, everyone should have received a draft article electronically,
I didn't
right?
have a
Everybody
chance
has
to
this?
see.
It was
Is this
mailed
one
out
here?
to everybody, yes, it looks like that.
Okay,
Let's,
this is the one that went out today.
well, this,
No, I think
this,
Sia sent it out a
Okay.
couple days ago.
Sia sent it out
Yeah.
several days ago.
Okay. Pass it
Right.
around to anybody who
Does
doesn't have it.
anybody, I have one more copy
I don't
here.
need one. Oh, you need one.
you.
Should we pass out the money piece too at this point?
Judge, if you
Sure.
want. This says nothing.
Pass that down that way, and then for him, pass that way.
We got-
Let me know if there's an extra. I made 10, mailing the committee.
I don't need any.
Okay.
I don't need one.
As we may remember, there is approximately $9 million in the funding window for this April 2013 town meeting. We have received input from the selectmen that they wanted to have the numbers for the projects that we thought should move forward to the design level. And they wanted that as soon as possible, and so that the contract with GHD was to develop the numbers for Bourne's Pond and the Lower Little Pond watershed with the deadline of the end of December, and they have met that deadline. The warrant deadline for article placement is tomorrow. The article does not have to have a sum of money, but it's obvious that money is involved. And so that's sort of the second half of this discussion. The article itself is the wording that you have in front of you, and it's pretty standard wording. And it says a sum of money because the actual dollar amount goes in when the Finance Committee makes its recommendation. So a sum of money, and it has for two purposes as currently drafted. And that is the wastewater collection, transport, treatment, and disposal system for the Lower Little Pond Watershed Project. And then secondly, we want to be very explicit that we are widening Bourne's Pond Inlet and extending the length of the bridge. And then the rest of the language to determine how same shall be raised, that's all stock language. So this is before the committee tonight to vote as an article. We called it it's basically it holds a place on the warrant for specifics. And then the specifics are the second page that I've passed out. And this is the result of information that's been provided to the DPW from GHD with dollar amounts as to what is needed for these two projects. The Lower Little Pond Sewer Extension has a combination of design. We know that we will need a survey and soil borings, and we know that there's a permitting process. And that gives you a subtotal of $4.3 million. We know that we will need to deal with dealing with the recharge or the disposal of the treated water, and that's the $228,000. There is a need to evaluate the existing piping in the pipes that are in the ground now. And I'm just going on what we received from GHD that involves a television inspection and cleaning. And that has a price of $95,000. And then the Bourne's Pond project has design and permitting costs totaling $700,000. So you come to a total of $5,384,000 is the piece that of the $9 million window that would be needed to move our particular projects forward at this time to the degree that we're ready.
Discussion?
I see nothing wrong with it.
Your motion.
Let's have a little discussion first. I know. You'd like
But do you want comments in the form of what someone at the town meeting might ask before they voted on it?
Try it.
Sure.
If we spend this money now, it's for design, what will be the cost of the actual project? in the spirit that if you're building a house, you don't ask just what the architect charges. You presumably are interested much more in what the house will cost.
Right.
And
there is
5
a number,
times.
there is a number, the 47 million or something.
54 million.
7 plus.
We have the number, and we can, right.
54 million, off the top of my head, and that would include the engineering and the.
Well, then we're taking, well, the engineering's gonna be paid for
Right,
already,
so-
we're not paying
so
for it twice.
47.
So,
10
Okay,
times.
I mean,
But it-
sometime, we don't need to do it now, but sometime before the
Oh,
meeting,
there will
that
be-
should all be laid out in a
Absolutely.
very clear way.
Right, that's close, the 47, for both projects, right?
correct.
Right. Yeah, we'll have, that number will be available, absolutely. Other comments or questions or?
Well, it's certainly going to be, there's going to be competing funding articles that are after this window.
When we went to the selectmen with the CWMP, they made it quite clear that we were not going to be given the whole 9 million for our purposes, and we responded that we agreed with that. And so what we're coming in with here is a little over half, which I think sticks to the spirit of what they asked and what we answered at that time.
Yeah. Just speaking broadly, I think it's the intent of the selectmen to use that 9 million, which is replacing new debt, retiring old debt and replacing new debt, to work within that window with the various needs of the town. And so I personally think that this is a reasonable amount of the window for the particular projects that are ready to go to design.
I think they are thinking only in terms of major infrastructure. We're not talking police cars for this sort of thing.
Just to go off course a little bit here, I have had some comments from people who live in the area of Perch Pond that saw that they're not included in the sewering area.
Yeah.
It's part of Great Pond watershed. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
That's the reason. We're going to get that all the way along. As soon as we draw the line, wherever the line is drawn, there are going to be people outside it who say, I really wanted to be in, and there are probably going to be people inside that say, I don't need to be in, I want to be in.
But they're on the Mara Vista side.
They're right there on the Mara Vista side, but they're in the Great Pond watershed. And this is the lower Little Pond watershed.
Okay.
So we need a motion to approve the article language. That's ultimately the
So
dollars.
moved.
Thank you.
Second?
Made and seconded, further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And this number, I don't think we need
The number is ultimately going to be decided by the selectmen.
Oh, that's right.
So it has gone to the selectmen, and there will be other needs that they will look at for both wastewater and water department and other parts of the town.
Right.
And then they'll ultimately come up with a package.
Echo toilets.
I'm going to pass out a draft that you haven't received electronically. And
I got it.
Oh, you do? I'm sorry.
Does Wayne have?
yeah, Wynn has one.
Yeah.
And I'll give you just a history on this. I didn't get a chance to really work on this until this week. I sent a draft to Jerry and Frank. I didn't heard back from Jerry right away, and he hates everything I do anyway.
No, I said
so.
see Frank. I couldn't write what Frank said as well as he.
That's not what you said. Come on, be real. And then Frank didn't get back. I didn't really get his comments until this morning. Yeah, January 3rd. So, and as you can see, they're not favorable to my draft. Now, you don't even have to read it. Just take my word for it. It needs work.
Yeah.
So what I propose doing is filing this as a placeholder and working with Frank and Jerry and whoever else wants to work on it to come up with something. We may have to do a home rule petition, according to Frank. And we may not be ready this Springtown meeting, and we may have to put it off till fall. But as long as we have a placeholder, we could, in fact, come up with language that we might be able to get through town meeting. The only other thing I would add is that town meeting went for the concept. They voted for the concept. And, we should, we should be working towards that. And so I'm asking for a vote to use this as a placeholder.
Can I take a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion. Matt, if you put this in as a placeholder, it's with the understanding that town council may decide that this wording is not appropriately before the town meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Well, no, it's definitely, I think it's within the scope. But it would be, what I anticipate doing is something like I did at the last town meeting, where you make a different motion with a whole completely different wording.
I see. Okay, all right.
Would you be prepared to, let's say, I think what Frank was saying, I happen to agree with him, so it was easier for me to read it than others, that for this to go forward, maybe you should just go forward and say we want a special town meeting. We want special legislation. Town meeting authorizing special town.
Yeah, we don't need this doesn't have to be special town meeting.
No, I meant special you know what I'm talking about.
A home rule petition.
Home rule petition. I think that's what Frank's saying.
Right, so but even we need that language worked out, and that's what and look, if we can't get it, I'll just pull the article, or we'll just.
Okay, maybe the home rule petition, however drafted, wouldn't fall into the scope of what the printed article is.
Right. If it's a home rule petition, we could write whatever we want.
I think
right?
you just anticipated my question. Are you saying that you won't keep it on the agenda for the town meeting unless there's a version that's approved by Frank Duffy?
Yeah, and that we know is going to work. I don't want to try to force anything through that's not going to work. I mean, it's obviously you got to be pragmatic about this. I'm not.
Well, it's a lot more complicated than
Yeah.
you knew at the beginning, or any of us knew at the
Right.
beginning. And this whole eco toilet thing's been a learning process right along, and we're still learning.
You better believe it.
So there's a motion made and seconded to what?
Put this as a placeholder article.
Right.
Right.
With the understanding that Matt is going to work on language that town council would approve for a motion on town meeting floor. And if I can add then, and if you don't have that, then you will withdraw the article.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I think that's fair enough.
Made and seconded for the discussion?
Just a quick thing. You may want to check with Barnstable. I think someone did a home rule petition like this 6 to 9 months ago. I get so much stuff that flies by my desk. It's out there someplace.
Okay.
If you can find the email, send it to me.
You know I love you.
All in favor?
Sound like
Aye.
Dallas Alice.
The ayes have it.
Right.
Good. Next item on the agenda, establish process and timetable for response to MEPA comments on the CWMP. Virginia,
Oh.
you're up.
Well, not necessarily, but here, let me introduce it this way. I was not at the December 20th meeting, but I did read the minutes, and I did read the PowerPoint presentation that Nate and Nate prepared and Jeff presented, and I thought there was a lot of useful information in it. I have some thoughts and some observations, but I thought since I wasn't at that meeting that maybe you would want to just ask the committee members if they had any thoughts first. I mean, I can jump in, but...
Fair enough. Does any other committee member have any thoughts regarding the process and timetable for response to the MEPA comments?
Response to what?
To the comments that were made to our CWMP by MEPA and the state agencies. Okay. You have the floor.
All right.
Sounds like more work than
that's my bottom line. Okay.
Sounds like too much work.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to make some comments and observations, and then I'm going to make a suggestion for how we deal with the work. So what I see here is the GHD has done a pretty good job of extracting the issues and questions that were in the wide variety of letters and comment letters, there we go, that were in our CWMP. I counted how many. There are 226, which I thought was a lot of work. And about half of those are the actual agency, MEPA, DEP, some CZM, and Buzzards Bay Coalition, which do need fairly detailed responses. So that's about 50% of the work. There are issues embedded in some of these comments, and in other cases, it's really just a report. We need to report factually, these are the scopes of work, these are the companies we've hired, this is the timetable when they're going to do certain work, this information is already available, and so on. So my suggestion for how to move this particular piece of the final CWMP that we're working on, how to move that forward, is that I will volunteer to work with GHD.
God bless you.
and DPW.
That's a double God bless.
to draft the responses. Where it's obvious that we need a decision, a policy decision and a choice, then I think it needs to be an agenda item, and I will tell Eric that X needs to be on the agenda so that we have a sense of the committee when we're making a choice. And I can see that happening, for instance, just to pick one little example, with Crocker Pond, there's a list of things of information that are needed, and one of those includes getting some environmental analysis of the status of Herring Brook in August. And in my mind, waiting to have data collected in August and then a report maybe in September or October, and we have to hold this all up while we're waiting for that. I don't think that's time well spent, and I'm very concerned about the larger picture of the timeline within which we have to fit our funding. So where we have to make a decision and choose a path, I would suggest that be something that's on the agenda. I would work, as I said, with GHD and DPW, and we would develop basically a rough draft with an answer to all of these questions and issues that are raised, and the entire rough draft would come back to the committee for your review. My goal is to have that rough draft by the middle of April, if not sooner. I'm just gonna, so I'm really saying that to GHD and to Jerry, that we're going to begin to march our way through these things, and clearly we want to identify fairly soon the agenda items where the committee is going to say, we have reasons to feel that this is as far as we're going to go in providing the information. We just can't wait until the demonstration is done. Aquaculture would be another one. So we're going to give as much information as we have that's factual at that point in order to keep the larger picture moving forward, in order to keep us on track.
Yeah.
So if that's agreeable, that's my suggestion.
But one other point on that, which is that each individual member of the committee has their own area of expertise, and as those topics are being taken up, she would obviously...
I would consult with you.
Work with you on getting those answers right.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the premise. Jerry?
I do think we need some cost proposals or something from GHD real soon for the issue you discussed earlier, and this was the idea, do we want to model one with the bathymetry data we have now? I'm not enough expert to say yay or nay, but if GHD, yourself and others think that's what we need, that's like next time we meet, let's get a cost proposal so we can vote on it.
Does that timetable sound doable to you?
Yep. Should I speak into the microphone?
Yes.
Yeah.
If it's to produce the
response to comments, which is essentially this document, but filling in all the blank spaces.
Right.
I believe that is doable by mid-April.
Okay.
It does require a commitment to meet and to hash things out and to draft things up and put them on the table. And I definitely admire and respect your willingness to come forward and do that. I do believe that it's probably best dealt by a committee of one, with, you know, expertise, you know, from consultants and professional staff. So I think it's a very good proposal. So yes, it is possible by that time, and certainly GHD has the capacity to be able to meet that deadline and meet with you and to move it forward.
Okay. All right.
We don't need a vote.
No.
Okay.
It's a vote of thanks.
Should we? Should we?
Well,
just to lock it in place.
I move that Virginia's proposal be accepted.
I second.
Well,
anybody, all in favor?
Aye.
As you know, I will try to be even-handed.
She abstained, you know.
I did abstain. But there clearly, there will be small judgment calls, and then wherever I think there's a large judgment call, I'm definitely going to make sure that there is wider input so that we develop a good, solid document. I don't want a lot of rehashing at the end.
No.
If you want things from us as individuals, how soon would you like to have, would you like to put an estimate on the time?
As
you
we
would like
plow through 226 responses, I can't tell you, you know, when your name or issue will pop up, but rest assured that I will get in touch with you on eco toilets, denitrifying septic systems, however you want, Matt, on the aquaculture. Ron's not here, but he would be the other person that would be intimately involved.
And so is Steve.
Steve Rafferty. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Good.
I would assume that what we're talking about is a paragraph or 2, 3 at the most for this response. Paragraph ideal.
Yes.
Right.
That we're not talking about epitaphs.
Right. I would agree. I would agree. And there is some repetition in some of the comments, and so obviously that may refer us back to a prior response that's sort of like.
Or yet to be developed full of response.
That's the other way of dealing with it. So we'll try to be consistent and efficient.
One question. I would hope that this response to comments will be done in a way that also informs GHD on how we will actually prepare the final.
Yes.
You know, around the basis of the draft that's been prepared, which is going to involve some decisions of which pieces of text get rewritten, which ones get expanded, those sort of things.
Right. I would say, and generally, that's correct. One of the pieces of confusion from people reading it, and that's agencies as well as, you know, interested citizens like the Sierra Club, is that as we submitted it, there were lots of sections that were the old CWMP. And so it's been, you might have superseded across it, but most people found that really confusing. And so by the end, they couldn't, okay, which is the chapter that is the, you know, our plan?
That's exactly right.
So if we can get that out of there, okay, so that we end up with a more workable document.
So many of them spent their time commenting on how are you going to possibly get rid of 3.1 million gallons of treated effluent? Well, we're not. And we never said we would. Except in 2002 or 2007, we might have said we would. The version we sent out did not say we would. And that kind of confusion shows up over and over again. They don't know which version is the current one because and it makes no sense to them, and they were right.
I do, having worked with DEP for decades, I do understand that they sort of have a list of things that they need to check off. And so we need to develop clear answers to explain this is Falmouth's plan, and this is our answer to that box. It may not be the full-fledged plan that they want, but they've got to understand that if we can't get the first base, we're certainly not going to get the home plate. And so that's very clearly, I mean, you're going to hear me push on that in a couple of different ways.
Yeah, no, that's,
Okay.
well, that's exactly the type of
Okay.
direction and coordination that's really needed. Yeah.
Okay. You asked a very specific question, and that's about doing the computer modeling. This is particle tracking, for anybody that, correct, that Jesse Schwambaum would do for the discharge area for the treated effluent, which has been loosely called Site 7, but we're actually looking at a larger area, and that's partly because of comments that have been raised by the Buzzards Bay Coalition. So they've added Herringbrook in and that whole area. As a very key specific, I think that piece of work needs to move ahead. And in my mind, that is funded through what was called the enhancements of your existing contract, right? Like in other words, we have the monies approved for that kind of effort. So how soon could that be done? Because that would inform us in lots of ways. If we're just charging 290,000 gallons from the lower Little Pond watershed, just what is the impact of 290,000 gallons, not the 3 million that everybody seems to be talking about?
Right. I talked with Jesse today just to ask him that question of his availability. And he says that, you know, in terms of updating the existing model that he developed, you know, a sub-regional model, incorporating the bathymetry into the model, which wasn't known at the time that the model was developed previously, and then running a series of model runs to explore some of the questions that were raised about a month ago at that meeting, which was, okay, tell us how much we can put in there before we cause an impact.
That was Steve Rafferty's
Wait, that was the committee's charge.
Yeah, that was the charge. And as I've thought about it more, and as Jeff and I developed this framework that Jeff presented 2 weeks ago, the approach was that, well, if you can confine the recharged water to Crocker Pond, Herring Brook, and Buzzards Bay, without it going to Wing Pond, and that watershed over there, then you will be confining the issues to a smaller area.
Are you quoting Jesse in this? What you've just said, that's a quote from Jesse, or that's your interpretation?
That's part of the approach that we took when we put together this framework of how much flow we should be looking at. And it also follows up on the direction that was discussed at that time of just looking at recharging at Site 7, not looking at recharging at Site 10, which is not in as much a control of the town.
Not at all.
So it'd be to take a look at Site 7, see how much flow can go into that site physically, and at that point, do we have any particle tracks that go over to Winged Pond?
Right.
If they do, then start scaling it back to those particle tracks so that they just go, you know, to the Buzzards Bay. I believe we had already demonstrated that none of them go into West Falmouth Harbor.
I believe we have.
Yeah. So it's really reducing the flow so that there's no potential impact to Wings Pond. And then looking at that flow as the maximum that can go at that site without going to the two neighboring watersheds. And then also looking at what the particle tracks would look like if we scale that maximum flow down to a lower Little Pond watershed flow of approximately 3. So those would be the model runs. Then we would see what the particle tracks are, and then we could initiate the evaluations of whether those particle tracks, the associated nutrients, phosphorus for fresh water, nitrogen for the marine waters, whether those could have an impact on those receiving waters.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you're right on that the particle tracking begins to put a framework around it of quantifying it. And then the next step would be to take that quantification and working with the freshwater quality experts of, well, how much is enough? which quite honestly, as was discussed in this framework, really comes down to a soil science evaluation of how much can be bound up by that soil.
Right.
And how much time period will that binding give you? And then associated costs and decision-making is associated with it, whether there should be additional phosphorus removed at the treatment plant to give you more life of that soils and things like that.
Okay.
Does this particle tracking involve the question of how much of this might go under Crocker Pond, or is that a separate issue?
No, particle tracks will quantify how much goes underwards, yeah.
Okay, because that's clearly an issue that...
Correct.
Yep. Okay. All right, so you had the conversation with Jesse. It sounds to me like the scope of work is right on target.
When's that going to happen?
Yes, that's my next question. What's involved with...
Jesse said he is available to do that.
Okay.
Typically, once he's given the go-ahead, which means once there's an agreed-upon scope of work and things are signed up and ready to go, it ought to be a matter of 3 or 4 weeks for him to do that work. It does then take some time to take his work and...
Right. How close are we on the scope of work for that, do you think?
I mean, the question is if it's in the enhanced task, we can move ahead.
Right.
As soon as you get it.
Yeah,
The
okay.
selectmen have already approved it.
Yep.
Is it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so fine.
So we need a scope of work, and if it's for the cost outline, you know, it's flying it by.
Right. So you're going to do that?
If you ask me to do, I will.
Bring it Monday night.
Consider yourself asked.
Okay.
Right.
What can we say?
Okay. That's the logical next step, and it will provide us with some very useful information.
Great.
Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, what?
We have, I think, and it's too late to discuss it tonight,
Yep.
a whole host of additional costs possibly to answer the CWM, the draft CWMP. Those have to be costed out, brought back to us, especially if they're going to go over your existing CWMP budget.
Well, to be fair, this information would be critical to that.
Yes.
If this turns out to make this a non-starter, we don't want to start spending money on those additional tasks.
Well, there may be a whole bunch of other stuff, but
right.
the Site 7 task will go away.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So does that.
Yeah, I agree with you. We need to have, I'll just say loosely, a staff meeting that lists out what other pieces are out there that haven't been nailed down yet, either in terms of dollars or in terms of timeline. Right. But I think in terms of critical path, the modeling is right up there.
Okay, the witching hour is approaching very soon.
Yes.
Before everybody...
Eric, I just had one thing for...
Okay, wait, let me just finish up. We're meeting the selectmen Monday night. You're going to be there, 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 I'm going to be there. All of you are welcome to be there.
This has to do with putting the warrant together, and it has to do with the articles and the dollars.
Yeah, what we just voted tonight.
Yes.
The article and the dollars.
We will present dollar figures, correct?
Right.
I think we...
no, they'll get the dollar figures and do what they want with them.
We don't have a time yet.
8 o'clock.
Oh,
8
sorry,
o'clock?
we do.
We do.
Okay.
Okay, so that'll be 8 o'clock Monday night. We made it late for you, so...
I thought it actually was 8:30 on the agenda.
I think it was 8 on the agenda, but if you're telling me it's 8:30, I'd be willing to be corrected.
Because my wife said, oh, it's even later.
Steve, let me borrow your pen.
Okay, Jerry sent it around this afternoon, so...
What did I send around?
The selectmen's agenda?
Oh, yeah, it's at 8:30.
Oh, it's 8:30, even better. Fine.
Okay.
Okay. Great.
What do we want from them? Do we want a mini, what they gave us?
Could we sort of work that out?
Yeah, let's work that out.
I know you're off
afterwards.
tomorrow. We'll work it out Monday morning.
We'll work it out after
I
the...
can take emails when I'm
Yeah,
off.
sit
Fair
tight.
enough.
Let's stick
Okay.
with the agenda now.
So Tom had...
Yeah, just on the matter of the article and the issue that was brought up on the table about how to handle questions
in town meeting?
That might come up.
Yeah.
We've got this watershed model we've been working on that's kind of illustrative, that has been, could be an enhancement of conveying what the advantages are of a collection system versus other systems within the Little Pond watershed. So the watershed MVP, if you've heard about that, and so I guess I just wanted to put that on the table. If you were interested in that, we'd be glad to work with the committee or your consultant or whatever, and you could see what the products are, and if you liked it, then you could use it or decide not to.
Two things that have come up this week, which since you're here from the commission, we could ask you for. Ponds, you've been telling us about all the pond work the commission's done over the years. Yeah. Any that you have done that relate to any of this area in question, we'd like to have it, because we don't have it.
We've researched our stuff. We actually had to go up into the archives in the jail.
What'd you find?
Where George works, and we found the stuff.
You did?
Given it to
Okay, you've got some stuff. Okay, the other piece is there's been some talk about aerial surveys. Has the commission done aerial surveys anytime, and do they plan on doing aerial surveys anytime?
I'm not sure about the status of that, so GIS.
Okay. If you could find out, because it has been a part of it.
Tracking it down.
Doesn't DEP do aerial photographs?
Well, we have, there's all kinds of aerial surveys.
We're tracking it down. We're gonna get factual.
Fine, okay, so he might know since he's here. Okay, great, Win.
I just wanted to ask Tom, if I wanted to go on the internet, is it available down the internet to view and
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet.
No.
I'm very interested in learning more about that as soon as I can.
Okay,
You run it pro bono for us.
Report of members and staff.
Give the Department of Technical Services to the town of Falmouth, we'd be glad to help out.
We're done.
Demonstrate that.
Report of members and staff. Any other observations, comments?
I have one question. I have made an appointment with Tana Marie on Friday at 11 o'clock to discuss a proposal that I made to her that possibly we would, that she was asking for proposals for things that we might do, and I said, would you like to run a program in March or April, sometime like that, on the progress which the eco-toilet program has made. And I'm going to talk with her on 11 o'clock on Friday, and I just wanted to say if anybody else wanted to be there.
Tomorrow?
No, that's on Friday.
Tomorrow is Friday.
No, 11 o'clock Friday, next
Oh, next Friday.
Not tomorrow.
Friday,
Friday the 11th. Friday the 11th.
Shortly.
Okay, gotcha.
So if anybody who's interested in coming, just wanted to make available that.
Okay, great. Any other? Derek?
PLB contract was signed to CDM Smith.
Good.
I'm assuming within a week or two we'll have a kickoff meeting.
Good.
Or I'll be kicked.
Yep.
Okay, and that's the permeable reactive varieties.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Any other? See ya.
Letter of thanks.
Oh, yes. The letter of thanks to
Which is always the 10 o'clock hour. But we're
Right.
going to do it tonight. I sent around on Monday a revision that didn't promise that we were going to send our comments to the respondents. Nobody sent me anything back on this letter. If it's okay.
We'll look for a motion to adopt the letter as she's presented it.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. What else?
Would you like to sign it or the whole committee? That would be my only question.
Should be the
Chairman.
chairman.
The practice has been the chairman, yeah.
Give it to you
Okay.
tomorrow.
Any other comments or observations or reports by members or staff? Correspondence, any other correspondence? Discussion and vote on adopting the minutes of the previous meeting. Everybody got those in the email? Any, Steve had some changes. Were his changes already made?
Yes, they are.
Okay, fine. Any other changes?
I wasn't there, but it's Browley. You got that?
It's BRAWLEY.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And that's been fixed?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Got him. Adjourn.
Move adjournment.
Adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Good, bye.
Coming. Yes,
Thanks, George.
absolutely, but it's not up yet. I keep.
We were using it in town.
I see.
In-house, but it's not
On the wall. Okay.
Still the shellfish.
It's like public